This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
You're wrong! If you're getting any compensation, it's not charity!
Russ Wakeland. Did you put me on a boat with frickin' dragons attacking me and whatnot? Now we're talking. And Tom Vasel in the third chair.
Well, I have to say, throwing game pieces is very therapeutic.
With contributions from Total Fangirl.
Vampires do not sparkle.
And our loyal listeners.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming, coming at the speed of an Edward VII class Leviathan running on full tanks of Eteroid at high altitude and max power. This edition is brought to you by The Cranky Lawyer to the Council of Three at Blood in the Sun. Great tournament this year. Can't wait for 2013. And thanks to David for the hospitality. Tonight, our panelists are Russ Bob Woodward Wakeland and Tom Walter Vinchel Vasel. Father of gaming podcasting. Okay, let's begin. Issue number 1. Journalism is the discipline of gathering, writing, and reporting news. Journalism applies to various media and is not limited to newspapers, magazines, radio, or television. Many news organizations claim proud traditions of holding government officials and institutions accountable to the public, while the so-called new media, lacking this tradition, is often accused of a less professional demeanor. Question. The word journalism is taken from the French journal, which in turn comes from the Latin diurnal or daily. The Acta Diurna, a handwritten bulletin, was put up daily in the Forum, the main public square in ancient Rome, and was the world's first newspaper.
Wow.
What is the name of the father of modern American broadcast journalism? Dan Rather Russ.
Walter Cronkite.
Helen Thomas Tom.
Bob Smith.
Oh, that would be a wrong and a blind guess wrong. That would be Edward R. Murrow. The media is the message, my friends. The media is the message. I have a degree in it, and I don't know what that means. Issue number 2. For decades now, since even before the star-blazing flying battleships like the Yamato have dominated the imaginations of gamers and geeks the world over, whether they're flying with magical fuels, lighter-than-air gases, or alien technologies, these huge monsters of war roaring overhead are iconic images throughout Earth's cultures. Question. In what language was the alternate version of space battleship Yamato produced under the name Patrulla Estelar? Derek Wildstar Wakeland.
Spanish, please.
Mark Venture Vasel.
Cantonese.
One so close, so the other so far away. The answer is Portuguese. For the Navio de Guerra Vorando Yamato. Issue number 3. The 2005 board game hit Descent Journeys in the Dark firmly established the Fantasy Flight Games' fantasy world of Tyranoth and their domination, evil overlord style, if you will, of the dungeon crawl genre. The basic structure of the game, with a single player taking on the role of all the antagonists and the rest of the players running the heroes, was pioneered in part a year earlier in 2004 in an earlier FFG title, Doom the Board Game. Question. In Doom the Board Game, the players are attempting to break into a research base on Mars run by a corporation with the acronym UAC. What does the U and the A stand for in UAC? Roland Russ.
Under Armor.
T. Brooks Tom.
Underwear attack.
So much better if it would have been, but it's not. That makes you both wrong. Union Aerospace. That's U as in Union, A as in aerospace, and of course C as in evil corporation. Issue number 4. A great power is a state that is recognized as having the ability to exert its influence on a global scale. Great powers characteristically possess military and economic strength and diplomatic and soft power influence, which may cause small powers to consider their opinions before taking actions of their own. Sometimes the status of great powers is formally recognized in conferences such as the Congress of Vienna or an international structure such as the United Nations Security Council. Question. The first formal use of the term great powers was introduced in conjunction with a major shift in international power within the confines of Europe. What major event occurred to shift the distribution of power and highlight the existence of great powers for the first time? Kurt Waldheim Wakeland.
World War I.
Guy Vasion Vasel.
Treaty of Versailles.
So sad, so sad. Insert your favorite Francophobe joke here, folks. It was the fall of Napoleon, of course. The fall of Napoleon.
You're right.
That's all we've got. Of course I'm right. I've got access to the internets. That's all we've got for now. Thanks for listening and good night.
This episode of the D6 Generation is brought to you by GameSalute.com. Check out gaming news or find out what the new hotness is on Springboard. GameSalute.com.
And by Battle Foam, protecting your army so you don't have to.
And the War Store, bringing the war to your door since 1999, and that is for a decade or more.
And by Audible. Try the service, get a free book, and support the show. All by visiting audibletrial.com/D6G.
And by Geek Nation Tours. Rise up and join the Geek Nation, touring the world at geeknationtours.com.
And Wargame Soldiers and Strategy Magazine, making historical wargaming less scary and more fun.
Hello!
Hello! Hello!
And welcome to episode 107 of the D6
That's a very
generation.
odd, ugly number, I'm afraid.
I'm Russ Wicklund.
107. It gives you nothing to work with. Oh, sorry, I'm Craig Long.
Oh, and I'm Tom Vasel.
Hi, welcome, Tom. Tom Vasel, the Dean of Boardgame Podcasting himself, the man behind the Dice Tower, is here joining us today. We're so excited. Thanks for joining us, Tom.
Well, I don't want people to get the wrong impression. There were a few podcasters before I was around.
Yeah, but
you slowly had them knocked off.
Right. With wit and wagers.
Yes, I mean with wit and ability.
Right.
I'm just more stubborn. That's all. I lasted longer.
90% of success is tenacity. That's what they tell me anyway. So, you've been doing great. And Tom, so thank you so much for joining us on the show today. We're very excited to have you here to talk about some very exciting topics.
Always exciting to be on any podcast.
Because you don't get enough. First of all, Tom, the lucky dog, has been able to play Descent 2. Mm-hmm. Which
actually gets him a moniker slightly more... what you said.
There you go.
Well, I was going to say it was a great responsibility that weighed heavily upon me.
I'm sure it was.
And with great responsibility
so Craig,
awesome board games.
Exactly. So Craig and I have had a chance to read through the rules thoroughly, and we're going to give a Descent preview later this episode with Tom filling us in on the bits that he has observed whilst playing the game.
That's right. So the only place you can get the info is here or from Tom.
Or from Tom and his show. One or the other. Shh! Don't tell anybody that, though.
Oh, sorry.
And we're also going to be doing the big review. It's kind of a giant doubleheader today. We're also doing the Leviathans review.
That's right. From Catalyst Game Labs.
Yes, they were kind enough to send us an early review copy. It comes out in August. And we've had a chance to play it. And Craig and I are going to go through the review here. And Tom's going to ride along and let us know what he thinks as we go through this craziness.
Right.
But of course, we should probably mention our contest. Craig, what contest are we running currently right now?
Currently, right now, we are running the haiku contest. Mm-hmm. And the haiku contest is how you are going to win this awesome game, Leviathans, and the game Balance of Power, which also coincidentally deals with great powers of Europe.
Exactly. Conquering Europe. Like it says in the book, right?
Exactly. So what you are going to be writing are little haikus, and of course all haikus are little, but not all little haiku. Anyway, and you're going to be sending them to contest@the d6generation.com. And if you want to win Leviathans, write us a haiku about giant battleships that sail through the skies and pummel each other into submission. And if you want to win Balance of Power, then you can write a haiku about balancing and things of a powerful nature.
Right. Tom, you got a quick haiku off the top of your head? Anything good?
I was going to write one as you guys were talking, but I can't remember the syllables, so I've given up.
See?
575.
575.
That's right.
575. We'll give you a minute.
There'll be a quiz at the end of
the show. Banter. Banter, Leviathans and Balance of Power banter.
All right.
Banter Catalyst Game Labs banter, haiku banter, flying ships and conquesting Europe banter.
We're not going to make Tom write a haiku right now. But if you come up with one, Tom, just let us know. Jump in when you feel ready.
So remember, though, contest@the d6generation.com or your assignment won't count as on time.
And they're due the episode after this one, so the end of July. So keep an eye out for that. Watch
this month. July is haiku month.
It is. And, if we were a professional podcast like the Dice Tower, we have a date for you here, but we don't. So just watch the
we're not.
Watch the Twitter and the Facebook page for the exact due dates. But don't procrastinate. Just send it in now to contest@the d6generation.com, and you'll be all set, and you might be a wiener.
Can't tell you how many emails we get. Oh, I meant to do it and I didn't.
Right.
Well, you know what? You can't win this awesome board game or either of these awesome board games if you wanted to, but you didn't.
Now, in other news, Tom, are you going to Gen Con? Yeah, go ahead.
I am. And in conjunction to that, can I make a quick plug here?
Yeah. Sure.
I don't want to talk about the awesome Dice Tower stuff, but the Jack Vasel Memorial Fund, I just wanted to keep people keep that in people's mind that that's still going on.
Oh, yeah. So how can they donate to that, Tom?
Well, yeah, it's just this thing that's going on all the time. And last year we raised $35,000. Well, actually, we probably raised more than that. I don't know. That's how much we had when I asked at one point. But we were able to help out a lot of gamers in need.
That's fantastic.
So just something that's on my mind a lot, these days. And so it's for gamers by gamers. So if you have more,
awesome.
It's the best thing that we do at the Dice Tower. If it's not really part of the Dice Tower, but for those of us who work there. Anyway, just wanted to give that a shout out.
Well, Tom,
absolutely.
Where do they go to if they want to learn more or donate? How do they find out?
That'd be at jackvasel.org. Vasel is V as in Victor, ASEL, like Vaseline without the INE.
Great. Well, that's awesome, Tom. That is a fantastic charity. Everybody should check that out. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
And so now, Tom, are you going to Gen Con?
I am. I'm going to be there in two capacities, as the host of the Dice Tower, of course, but also as the news director for Game Salute.
Ooh. That sounds very exciting. So do you get to wear one of those little hats with the little white pieces of paper on the side?
Is he going to have you wear like that full World War I uniform that he wore himself?
I'm trying not to come up with these conversations because I told Dan, I said, when you showed up at Gen Con 2 years ago and you were there in a World War II outfit and you were standing there at your booth and I didn't know who you were and I was kind of scared. And I said, what is this Game Salute thing? And I still didn't know after the convention was over. I said, I don't know what this Game Salute thing is. I said, it will be gone. Now he's apparently running Board Game Kingdoms.
Right. It's like trying to discuss or describe a water to a fish.
Yes, he's everywhere.
Everywhere.
Well, great. Well, we're going to be at Gen Con also, and we're very excited about, sadly, I don't even know why we keep mentioning this because it's sold out, but we're very excited about our...
why don't we just keep mentioning that it is sold out?
Well, yes, our Play by Mob event, which basically we're going to do a little live rapid fire there at Gen Con. We're going to do a live Achievements in Gaming, and then after that we're going to have a Play by Mob event. The last couple of years were Play by Mob RPGs. This year we have an actual honest-to-goodness game designer helping us with a giant Play by Mob game.
Should be awesome. Also, we should mention that last year all of our friends got tickets and then bailed.
Yeah.
So that's more than 10% of the total tickets available. Mm-hmm. So go even if you couldn't get tickets because there's probably going to be seats, at the very least, from our lame friends who bailed.
Exactly.
Woo-hoo!
Right. Exactly. So you can sneak in that way, too. So we hope to see you there. And that is the one place you're guaranteed to find Craig, myself, and Nicole if you're trying to find us that weekend. The rest of the weekend, who knows? We're running around just doing all kinds of craziness, trying to play games and whatnot. So we'll see. So that is all of that. Oh, and one other thing we should announce, and now, Tom, I know you about this. We just recorded the last Lost Chapters. It's up now on the internet. And it was book 36. And, Tom, do you remember what we discussed?
We talked about something that none of us have.
Right.
Taste?
That's podcasting ethics. Oh, wait, or is it the other way around?
Right.
We all have. I forget. But it's some pretty low-life, scummy talk.
Right. And the irony is not lost on us that we are charging for the episode about podcasting ethics.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, I know.
So you get to, in fact, on the blooper part of that show, you get to hear Craig sing "Isn't It Ironic?" just to kind of wash the whole thing out there, bring it all together.
It'll wash it right out of your brain.
It just makes you. So yeah, but it was an interesting conversation. We talked about what do we do with review copies and what do we do with how much advertising is too much and all those kinds of crazy things we get asked about a lot. So if you enjoy that, check on that out. To find out more about the Lost Chapters, just head over to the D6generation.com and click on the little pile of books over there on the right-hand side. And the easiest way, of course, to listen to those things is through our free iOS and Android apps. We get a lot of good comments about those. Head on over and download those for free. And it's a great way to listen to the show and get the Lost Chapters at the same time.
Yeah, it manages all of your D6 generation needs.
It does. It does. So what's the time now for, Craig?
Right now it's time for Achievements in Gaming.
Wait a minute. Where's your sound effect?
I told you I have a broken wing, and that is the wing that reaches for my sound effect.
Here I was sitting here thinking that, I said, does Russ add that in post-production?
Yeah, well, he should now, shouldn't he?
I should.
Wait, here, let me... It's time for Achievements in Gaming.
See, that's the kind of sacrifices we make for you listeners on the show. Good job,
I really
Craig.
want one of those.
Wow.
And whose Achievements in Gaming brought to us by this time?
You take it.
Well, thanks, Craig. This one's a shout-out from Rick of Connolly, Perth, Western Australia. This goes to my D&D Next Play group. Harry, Joanne, John, Annalie, and Paul. I'm looking forward to the next game. See you there. Good eye. See, I added the good day. He didn't really ask for that part. So, Tom, starting with you, why don't we let guests go first? What have you been playing lately?
Well, I'm going to go from the last time I was on the show.
Okay, that sounds fair.
But then I figured we don't have time for that. I'm going to go backwards here. The last thing I did was on Sunday, this past Sunday, I had a bunch of middle schoolers. That's who I work with at church. I had them over to my house for a cookout. And after the cookout, I don't play baseball and football, that sort of nonsense. We play board games. So I got the boys and put them all down, and we played Cosmic Encounter. Now, there was 8 of them, so I only want to play with 6 players because it's a little better with 6 than with 8. And none of them had ever played before. And it took about 15 minutes before they started accusing each other of backstabbing and villainy and
Perfect.
such. And by the time it was over, they were all thrilled to death, and they played it instantly again. And several of them asked where they could buy such a game. And so I was very happy with the outcome of that, even if the last game ended in a 4 out of the 6 teams won and the other 2 lost because of villainy and wickedness and double dealing and such. But no one cried, so that was
good.
a plus.
That's a good game of Cosmic Encounter there. That's awesome.
We also played Ave Caesar, a fantastic race game that really needs to be reprinted. I know there was a reprint recently done by some game company that's not in existence anymore, where it was put in the future, but it's the meanest racing game, I think, in existence.
Now, what's the theme here? Is it a chariot race because of the Caesar thing?
Yeah, it's a chariot racing, and you basically you play cards from your hand to move the chariot, but you can deliberately block someone else from moving, so on their turn, they can't go because you've blocked them. Also, there's a point, it's a 3-lap race, and it's very fast, 45 minutes to an hour, but during that 3 laps, between 2 of the laps, you must pull up into the lane by Caesar, throw a coin on a table, and shout Ave Caesar. Now, I make people stand up on a chair and shout it as loud as they possibly can, which can be disruptive at conventions. And people, the boys are like, we're not doing that. I said, okay, then you lost. Like, what? I said, because I'm Caesar, and I'm very displeased with this. So I flicked their horse off the table. Well, no. Then they stand up and they go, Ave Caesar. I said, no, my wife in the kitchen, she needs to hear that. And so until she was satisfied that she heard it, we didn't continue. It works out fantastic.
Excellent.
And then we played the magical game of Magical Athlete. Have you played this?
I've not heard of that either.
I have not.
Magical Athlete is a game that is probably a horrible game. But it's idiotic, and it's a convention game. I take it to all conventions. Basically, at the beginning of the game, you draft a bunch of athletes. They're like wizards and ghouls and goblins and what have you. And then you have 4 races. You send out one of your racers, and on your turn, you roll a die, and you move them that many spaces, and the first one to the finish line wins. But each guy has a special ability that they can use sometimes. And it's ridiculous. It's like Cosmic Encounter the race. And it's really bad. The component quality is not very good. But for some reason, it elicits laughter and cheers and shouts, and go for it.
It's just the right mix, huh? That sounds cool. So you get to play like undead and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. There's just all these different. Each one has. They look like anime. They look like that Chiba, whatever that stuff's called.
Chibis, yes.
It's that kind of artwork. So it's all silly. Like one person can re-roll their die, another person can switch places with another spot. There's just different things like that. Like the siren everyone has to move one space towards her on her turn because they're attracted to her. Right. It's dumb fun.
Right.
And sometimes you just have to play dumb fun games. And with middle school boys, it's almost a guarantee.
Nice.
Speaking of that, I don't have it on the list here, but I got a game in the mail called Ark, or The Ark, or something like that. It's about Noah's Ark, but apparently in this game, there's 8 Noah's Arks, and you're trying to, get the animals to come to your Ark and not everybody else's. So I pulled this out with my kids, and you rolled 2 dice, and if you roll doubles, you go again. And whenever you land on a spot, you get a card that matches the color of that spot, and you're trying to get matching animals and put them in your ark. And at the end of a certain time limit, whoever has the most animals wins, the most pairs.
Right.
And I'm sitting there thinking, it's roll and move. This isn't that good. And when we were done, my kid said, "Dad, you're not getting rid of this game, are you?" Because I get rid of most of our games.
Right.
And I said, "Probably." And they're like, "No, this was one of the most fun games ever." because they have never played a roll and move game before.
Did you never let one in the house?
I've given them the best of gaming, and they like macaroni and cheese. And they're like, when you roll doubles, you get to go again? That's a novel concept. And I'm afraid they're going to go to college someday, and they're going to meet a guy, and he's going to play Monopoly with them. And they're like, Dad, you never told us about this wonderful game.
Right.
Monopoly. And then we played this game called Life. I'm raising my kids backwards.
It'll be an internet meme. Vasel's kids play Monopoly and Sorry.
But it was just so funny. I just couldn't get it because they keep coming back. They played it like 5 times in 2 days. I said, guys, I have the best kids games in the world on my shelf here. And you're playing Ark, rolling dice. But that just goes to show you fun is where you get it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Some bigger games, the big one that's on everyone's tongue these days is Lord of the Rings Nazgul.
Oh, yeah. What are you thinking of that one?
Well, I think we can all agree that WizKids is on a hot streak, right? I mean, they're just blazing trails.
They have
You
been,
have a
yes.
lot of cool stuff.
Their HeroClix is just massively selling well.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing really well with that. And between Quarriors and Starfleet battles, they had 2 solid games out there. Oh, I'm sorry, Mage Knight, the 3 games that just got them a lot of critical acclaim. This one is not going to get them that acclaim. It's a lot of good ideas in a box, but it has some problems with it. For one, you're playing the bad guys, which some people are going to be like, oh, cool, bad guys.
Right.
But at one point, we killed Legolas. And we're like, yes! Everyone gets ready to high five, and then you realize what you just did. We killed Legolas. Oh, here comes Gimli. Should we let him through? We just killed his friend. But you can't. And then secondly, the game is cooperative / one person wins. So you're all working together, but at the end, only one person wins. One of the wraiths wins. And so if you're not winning at all in the points, why would you want to help everybody else win? And then people say, well, that's just the way you should play. That's not the way I'm playing.
Play to win.
If I'm not going to win, I'm drilling a hole in the boat.
Nice.
I mean, you don't want to be a jerk about it, but at the same time, you don't want to help other people win. Right. So the game's fundamentally, you can play it straight cooperatively,
right?
But then you take out a lot of the good elements of the game. And I know I'm kind of glossing over the elements, but the game, it's okay.
Yeah.
But it's not as good as, for example, Pandemic, or as good as the Shadows over Camelot, or Battlestar Galactica. There's a lot of great ones out there. This one's okay. Yeah. I'll give them credit, though, for good theme ideas.
Yeah, it's disappointing, but I can kind of see that. I think when you go with the dark themes, it's not too many. I think Cast in the Old World is one of the few games you play the bad guys and it kind of works, but a lot of those games have trouble when you go dark, I think.
And the last game I'll talk about, because I really could go on and on here, is Empire Express. Have you guys heard of the Cran Rail games?
Oh, yes.
You see them at conventions. You see 4 guys sitting around a table with a couple of them are wearing railroad hats, the ones that they give the kids.
Yeah.
And they're all very serious. And you come by 2 days later and you wonder if it's the same game.
Right.
And they're very serious about it. And that's fine. They have a lot of fun. But these are fun games, but they're very involved. They usually take 3 hours. Empire Express is the same thing, but it's probably an hour game.
Ah, that's the Express.
It's taken the idea and streamlined it. It's almost too simple, I think. Mm-hmm. But I do like it. It's a good way to introduce someone to the how to play these type of games. And so if you've always wondered why people are drawing with a crayon on the board and it looks all complicated, Mayfair did a good job bringing this one. It's a good way for you to dip your toe into that train games. Well, what do they call them at the conventions? The
something X.
The train gamers all in a they all get to one section. They always have a train games. If a game is about trains at all, it could be about knights on a train killing dragons. But if there's a train involved, they will accept it. Uh-huh. It's a very interesting thing. I'm going to start my own group, like the hot air balloon group. We just will have a much smaller selection of games.
Well, that'd be cool. The Zeppelin group, anything with the Zeppelins in it, that'd be a cool game group.
That might work better.
Yeah, it'd just be more fun. Anything's cooler with Zeppelins. Let's be honest, right? So
no. But
what about a game? Well, never mind. All right. So, great, Tom. That was some impressive achievements.
That's
there.
A few of my achievements.
I'll give you one more just for all that
Very
long list
impressive.
there. Let's see. Well, my list is not nearly as long. I played Leviathans 3 times now, and enjoyed every one. So I'm looking forward to talking about that later in the show. Also, played 2 more games of Eclipse. Eclipse is finally back out again, and I finally got my copy. I was very excited about that.
And now with your little obscuring Luna project.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about more in modeling. We may have had we ran into a little impediment.
I thought so.
And a little impediment in the obscuring Luna. More of that in modeling there. And then finally, I played another game of Summoner Wars. That's a great... We use that as a filler game now on our Tuesday game nights. So whenever we're sitting around just 2 of us, that comes out.
I'm finding it hard to believe that you played a game of Summoner Wars, because that's like one of those potato chip things. Can you play just one game?
No,
that's true.
Well, the only reason we stop is because it's a filler game. So
that's
it's like
true.
Everybody
the only
gets
time
here,
you're going to only play one is a filler.
Right.
That's true.
But you're right, Tom. As soon as it is exactly that. As soon as you play one, it's like, oh, I'm going to grab another deck. Let's go again. That's a fantastic game.
So what's your favorite army currently?
Well, I've been, it's really the Swamp Orcs. I love the whole wall thing. I keep coming back to them over and over again.
They're my least favorite to play against. I hate them.
I love them because just
that would almost always be the reaction of anybody who asks Russ, "What's your favorite side in blank to play?"
Right.
And when he tells you that, your reaction is almost always going to be, "Oh yes, I like to play them the least."
So, what's your favorite one, Craig, in Summoner Wars?
To be totally honest, Russ, I have never played two. I've never played the same one. My goal has been to try to play every game as a different faction, just to kind of, and I don't know why, but I just wanted to kind of get a feel for all the different games, and they do totally play differently. I do love the Jungle Elves.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Yeah, they're neat. Because they have that speed thing that gets them a little bit of a boost. I think I may have won. Well, I've only played. No, I think I played with them a little more than once. But yeah, and I just like them all. So I look at that. It's weird. It looks like a little replacement miniatures game, but to me, it's way more of a board game still. And so I look at it like I just want to play all the different variety that it's got.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that's a good. What have you been playing lately, Craig?
That's my segue. Nothing, absolutely. Unfortunately, my situation has not been conducive to me leaving the house at all, and Russ actually snuck up here at one point so that we could play a couple games of Leviathans, which was a lot of fun, and the only gaming I've done in weeks. So thank you, Russ.
I'm glad I could be there for you, man. That's what we do.
I appreciated it.
And when Craig's not stuck in his house, we do actually venture out to Myriad Games. That's where we do all of our playing. And so Myriad just wants to let you know, on behalf of friendly professional gaming stores everywhere, check them out. They love supporting podcasts. They support a large variety of podcasts.
Yeah.
And if you're interested in becoming a Myriad member, please check out their MVP program. They have a great way to kind of help you manage and budget your gaming purchases monthly. It's great. So check out myriadgames.com/MVP for more info. Now, Tom, I know you're not much of a modeler. You're more of a board gamer these days. Although I know once upon a time you did play 40K in Fantasy. Or 40K.
I did,
Yeah.
back before I was converted.
Yeah, I was going to say the only way you can tell for sure that he played 40K in Fantasy is the bitter vileness in his voice whenever he talks about them.
Well, I saw my friends playing it one day, and I said, I don't want to get into that. And then I sat down and watched the game, and I said, that's pretty cool. That's neat. I looked at the rule book, all those stats. I'm a math guy, and I said, whoa.
Yeah, look at that.
So I went to the store, and the guy persuaded me to buy a 200 box set. I don't even know if they make these anymore. Do you remember, though, they had those 200 box sets?
The $200 army deals?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So I bought the Eldar, and I came and just demolished everyone's Space Marines. I felt so good about myself. Until they told me I couldn't play unless it was painted. So I got a spray paint. Red spray paint, and I spray painted everything red. And then I painted one model, and when I was at work, my wife painted the rest the same way I painted the first one. And it looked horrific. Not because of her, but because it looked like the Ronald McDonald Army. But they were painted, so back off, every Warhammer person.
Nice. So do you do any modeling nowadays at all?
No, the closest I did was I went to camp 2 weeks ago, and there was this wood shop there. And so I walked into the wood shop, and I was like, and I saw these weapons on the wall, and I said, well, wow, they're $7, and you could paint them. So I sat down, and I started painting them, and one of my friends was there, too, and he likes to paint, so he started dry brushing and doing all this fancy stuff. And I was just happy to get mine painted. And then these kids came by and looked at my axe that I had painted, and they all started, hey, come over here, look at this guy's axe. That's really good, mister. Wow, you did it. Wow. I'm thinking, I can paint. I can't. But for one brief moment, some people thought I could because it wasn't splattered with other paints. And then I said, maybe I should come back and paint more models, because every time I open a new game, I say, I got to paint these somehow, or at least dry brush them, at least, ink wash them.
Yeah.
Other than that, the only other modeling I do is I bought a huge pile of dice last year at Gen Con from Game Science.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they all need to be inked, and I am inking them at the speed of negative light because a 20-sided die, you ink one side and then you let it sit there to dry. Do you realize how long that takes? That was that was not a discount I got. They lied to me. He said, "Oh, it's really easy." No, it's really not. And I can't wait to meet him again.
Well, they have the I don't know why you just didn't go old school there and rub on them with a crayon. Remember how you used to do that back in the day when the dice had no...
Or a wax pencil.
Right. Remember that?
Yeah, but I want these to look professional, which if I wanted that, I should have just bought them that way.
That is a good point.
Good point. Well, Craig, how about you? Doing any modeling lately?
I have managed... It actually takes me longer to go and set up my paints now than my usual painting session. So I've done very little, but I have been sort of slowly chipping away at my Dust Warfare Axis Heavy Walker.
Oh, nice.
So it's a neat, actually, more like I build it and then I look at it and and then I put all my paints away.
That may be one of my favorite models ever of any model.
Oh, it's a great model.
Yeah,
it's
the Dust
really,
Warfare
really
tanks are
cool
awesome.
to look at, and the way the different weapons all fit together and everything is really neat.
Is it really fun to use with the new miniature rules?
I hope so. I haven't used it yet. I'm actually using the Dust Warfare. I'm using the same sort of mental mindset, if you will, allow me the redundancy and the repetition to the Summoner Wars. So every time I play, I'm now fielding totally different things, and I haven't managed to get the heavy on the board yet. But it looks cool stat-wise, so I can't wait to see it. It'll probably die to like the first shot, but
Well, they're pretty tough. They have they're hard to kill. I don't know, Thomas. I mean, you mentioned this earlier with the painting thing. It feels like board games nowadays, all the parts need to be painted. It just feels like you want to paint them all now. It just seems like they're cooler and cooler bits inside them nowadays.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that someone will do it for me. I'm hoping that one of my kids is going to grow up and say, "Dad, I've always wanted to paint stuff."
Good.
And I'll say, "Look, from now on, you have no other chores.
Right.
You don't have to cut the
there
grass.
you go.
You don't have to cut the grass, empty the garbage, wash dishes. Just sit in this room and paint. Nothing else."
Nice. That's brilliant. I might have to try that myself. Well, I had that same sort of thing, but this time by Project Obscuring Luna. I don't know if I've mentioned this to you, Tom, but most of these games do have components that really call out. But Eclipse, I love Eclipse, but the ships in there have been used in like 3 games now. And so I can't stand playing this wonderful game with these fantastic rules and these ships that are just generic, out of the cereal box spaceships. So I've been working on a way to replace them with some form of cooler miniature ships. And my original plan, which I've been talking about on the show now for a little while, was to use Firestorm Armada spacecraft, which look fantastic, but I've run into a couple problems. So I ordered those cool little Litco bases that are designed for board games that have very, very small feet. And you want those because you don't want to take up lots of the hexes with your spaceship bases and have no room for the cubes and the colonies and all that stuff. So those are the perfect size and they work fantastic. The problem is that most of the Firestorm Armada ships that are smaller, which is the ones I want to use, so they're not too big for the board, are metal, not resin. So they're too heavy and they kind of have a tendency to fall over. But the biggest problem I'm having isn't even that. The biggest problem I'm having is that there's not enough size differentiation between the smallest Firestorm Armada ship classes. So I was hoping that the escorts and the frigates, that the escorts would be much smaller than the frigates, but it turns out they're not. So the 2 game groups I played with, the first game group kind of thought they were cool and didn't have a problem. The second game group I played with, they really were kind of getting confused between the mediums and the smalls a lot. And the falling over parts were bothering them a lot. So I think I've got to go back to the drawing board now and find new ship models to use for my fleets instead of Firestorm. I'm sad because I really want to use Firestorm, but I don't think it's going to work.
Because they don't fit.
The biggest problem isn't even the size. The biggest problem, it is the size. The biggest problem is there's not a small and a medium sized ship. I either have to go all the way up and go from, frigates to cruisers to the big ships, but then they get too big.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And then I was thinking, well, maybe I could find like different sci-fi lines. Like I could find a bunch of small Star Wars ones and make a Star Wars fleet, and then find another bunch of small ones and make a Star Trek fleet. And you can have Star Wars versus Star Trek on the same board, but that might look too campy. I don't know if that's going to work.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm still working on it. So I'm back to the drawing board on Project Luna. I'm a little sad. Not going to lie. Yeah.
I hope you end up okay.
I'll do it anyway. I'm just going to figure out what to do.
Muffin.
Thank you for your support, Craig.
Nah, no problem.
All right. Now, what about, other random geeky stuff? Tom, you been doing any movies or books or anything like that?
Well, I don't. People always ask me how I have so much time. It's because I don't really watch much movies. And apparently they've canceled every good TV show in existence. I don't know when the next Doctor Who's going to come out, so I have to wait a long time for that. Mm-hmm. And all this other stuff, I don't like much of it. I like good storylines, so that Once Upon a Time stuff is not good. Anyhow, book-wise, I'm reading the second latest of the Honor Harrington series. I'm always behind because I'm too cheap to buy the hardbacks.
Yeah,
and I don't think they have these on digital yet. I can't find them anyway if they do. But the first time I read one of those books, I said that doesn't look very interesting at all. The picture in the front showed this basically looked like a girl with a cat on her shoulder.
Right.
I hate cats.
Yeah, me too.
I hate cats, and I was like, but man, if I had a tree cat, I would like cats.
Exactly.
It's a fantastic series. I'm a big fan of politics mixed with space combat. Something like Michael Stackpole. It reminds me a lot of his writing, and so I very much enjoy it. But I'm not reading nearly as many books these days because I've discovered the Marvel Comixology module for my iPad.
Oh, dear.
And and they stupidly have these 99-cent sales all the time for comic books. And so I'll be like, oh, well, yeah, I'll read that series. Why not? And then it just escalates. It's so good. There are some things, people say digital will never replace books. I cannot imagine thinking that a comic book is better than the iPad.
Really?
It's so much better because when you slide it, the panels will expand. Yeah. It will shoot to the action. It's so good. It's the best way to read comics. I don't accidentally see something at the end of the page.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That's big punch that's coming at, that took up half the page. You get to read the comments up. It's the best way in the world to read comics. And so I've been marvelizing. I've been reading some old ones. I've been reading some new stuff. I've been still in anger over what they did with Spider-Man. But it's excellent. Very good.
Now, speaking of Spider-Man, it sounds like you were a Spider-Man fan. Are you looking forward to the movie?
Well, not really. And I'll tell you why, because I don't want to see yet another Origins movie.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I wish they just kind of
we've already gone through that. We've heard Aunt May tell the story of how she met, her husband that no one cared about. And let's see some more action. For example, Fantastic Four 1 was a good movie, except 90% of it was building up to the last great battle.
Right.
That's why Avengers was such a rocking movie.
Right.
Because we didn't have to go through all those stories. We already knew them. Right. Let's just get in there and fight and get out. So it looks good, though. It's looking good. So I might have to watch it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the fact that he's got, unlike the last Spider-Man series, he made his own web slingers, which is good. But I'm a little nervous about the whole changing his origin thing and making his dad some sort of evil scientist thing. I'm a little nervous.
You know what that's from? That's from the musical.
Yeah, see, which makes me nervous too, because apparently the musical is total.
Oh, it was something different.
Something different.
I don't think it was his dad in the musical, but it was there are giant chunks of the plot taken directly from the musical, at least from the previews. It looks like that, which is bizarre to me because that's somebody who's confusing like the tendency for American theater to succeed sometimes as a train wreck as just general success. Like, oh, the Spider-Man musical was a success. Let's riff off that. No, that would be a bad idea.
You know what, though? I have to say that if I ever had a chance to see the Spider-Man musical, I think I would.
And you should.
And that's
absolutely.
why it's succeeding.
When I had that opportunity, I took it and seized it with both hands, and that was on my anniversary weekend with my wife. And I had to pay like buku husband points to pull that off, but I did it just so I could say that I saw it. You can't go to New York as a theater person and a geek guy and not see that musical if it's still running which I don't think it is, but it could be. I don't know.
No, I think it is because I think
man, was it bad.
I think Geek Nation Tours just went there actually, so I think they are there.
It was epically like mind-numbingly, life-alteringly awful. It was awesome.
Yeah, well, if it's bad enough, it can be good.
Exactly. This was Mystery Science Theater 3000 style awful is what it was.
Let's see. Well, anything else, Tom?
No, I think I mean
good. That's good.
I'm playing games. I don't have a lot of time.
No, I understand. Your achievements in games section was the most.
Man plays games for a living now. You've got to cut him some slack, Russ.
I've read some great game manuals. You know, they gave me the chills.
The intros.
Stayed up at night.
There you go.
Well, let's see. Well, speaking of movies and plays and stuff, I did see a couple movies recently. I saw with the family. I took them to see Brave, the new Disney film.
Yes.
Disney Pixar.
I went and saw that with my nieces.
I enjoyed it, and my favorite part about the movie. I mean, I liked the movie throughout. I thought it was a great film. But my favorite part is the fallout since the movie, because some people don't like the movie, and the people that don't like the movie are white men who are upset that white males are portrayed as idiots in the film, apparently. So really? I'm just excited that finally I am in a victim group. I have never been in a victim group before. It's kind of exciting.
Victimized by Disney.
I can actually be the person to say, actually, no, I was not offended by that. Thank you very much. I am in that grief-stricken, brutalized minority, and no, I am not offended. So
wait a minute. Aren't you a geek? You've been in a group your whole life.
Well, that's true.
Hey, grief-stricken and, all that other thing.
During the whole decade of the 80s, every
true.
movie made fun of us. Every single movie.
Yeah.
That's true. That is true.
Except War Games.
War Games is awesome. That's true. All right, we'll take it. I did like Brave, though. The kids loved it. Highly recommended it. Great family film. And then, though, did a double feature. So after that, we left the kids with Grandma. And Nicole and I went out because my wife, has to see every vampire movie ever made by mankind. We went out to see Abe Lincoln, the Vampire Hunter.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to expect from this film. I mean, it's Abe Lincoln hunting vampires. So I didn't
sounds like one of those that's so bad it's good things.
Actually, that's what surprised me. It was actually good. It was like Blade good. I mean, Blade is sort of a comic book crazy action film. This is the same thing except stick Abe Lincoln in there. It was the same sort of.
I liked it a lot.
I did too.
I too saw it and I enjoyed it a lot.
I thought it was fantastic. I love the slow-mo. You haven't lived until you've seen a slow-mo vampire hunter in tux and tails. That is awesome.
That's true. With a top hat.
Right, with a top hat. How good is that?
Does the hat stay on all the time?
No, it's not Indiana Jones campy, but it is close. His axe is pretty awesome. I'm not gonna lie.
His axe is awesome. Yes.
So that was great. And then let's see what else. For reading, I did finish. I think I mentioned last time I finished The Stand. So I'm looking for my next Audible book. So if you're, Craig, have you listened to anything Audible lately?
The Stand is that?
Sadly, no.
Go ahead, Tom.
Is that Stephen King's Stand?
Yes, I did. I would. They re-released it on audio format this past February because it was the first time he came out with a new version of The Stand back in 1990, the unabridged version with extra stuff he put in, and that had never been released in audio unabridged before. So that came out in February. So I picked it up, and about 3 months later, because it's 47 hours long, I finished it.
Was it good?
It was very good. Have you read it before?
I have. I've watched the TV miniseries where the first half was really, really good, and the second half was not. Yeah,
the series doesn't really do it justice. I think the book is better by itself. The book stands on its own. See what I did there? Okay.
Nice, yes.
But yeah, no, I would recommend the book highly. It was very, very good. And I like King anyways. If you like King, it's gajillion pages of his dialogue style. So there's some graphic parts in there, but it's pretty good. I really enjoyed it. And so my next Audible book, I'm looking for suggestions. Anyone wants to email me. And if you want to try Audible out, just head over to our website, click on the Audible trial button there. What do you get, Craig, if you go to the Audible trial section there?
Well, it's awesome, really. You get one free book of almost any book in their catalog, and you get a 30-day membership, which allows you to take advantage of all the different deals. And right now, they just finished up with another deal. It was a buy two for the price of one deal, I think. So, I mean, seriously, that to me, that's where the value is with all these different super deals. So all you've got to do is go over to our website and click on the little icon and get yourself a free 30-day membership and a free audiobook so you can experience it. And the cool thing about looking for these audiobooks, almost every one, if not every one, I haven't been able to find one yet. They have samples, so you can listen to like the first chapter, which is usually quite often like 10 or 15 minutes of listening to see how the guy's reading or the gal. And how you enjoy it before you jump in and see if it's a good match for you. So it's really a great way to introduce yourself to audiobooks, which is an awesome way to commute.
And every once in a while, you'll hear my co-host.
That's right. Eric does a lot of it. Yeah, he does. Yeah, that's right. Hey, Tom, are you an Audible subscriber?
What?
You don't support Eric in his efforts? Oh.
Yeah, I cheer for him a lot. Audiobooks is something that's still growing on me because I read 1,400 words a minute.
Oh, there you go.
And it's hard for me. It's hard for me to listen to someone else read. I want to punch him and say, "Go faster."
You need to get an MP3 player that speeds things up like Russ does.
Yeah, I put mine in times 2. So I listen to 4,000 words a second. That's how I do it.
And it sounds like
yes.
chipmunks.
Eric sounds like he's from The Wizard of Oz. So if you want to get that voice in your head, Tom, that's pretty cool. So, Craig, what else? What have you been doing for other before we?
Well, sadly, in all of the drama that I've been undergoing lately, my MP3 player seems to have gone missing.
Oh,
so I was in the middle of the hot gates, but it's okay because I haven't really been in a position. I do all of my listening driving, which I'm not allowed to do anymore, and mowing the lawn, which I'm doubly not allowed to do anymore.
Ever.
And mayhap ever. And so I'm eagerly anticipating the end of The Hot Gates by John Ringo. But currently, I got my first when I first got the Kindle, I was disappointed when I saw the prices and I thought, I'm going to save on these digital. Wait a minute. These are almost exactly the same price. And I finished up a Black Library book, the Primarch's book I talked about last time where I wasn't too thrilled about it. And so I was looking around for another book, and I saw that you could get the first 5 books of the John Carter of Mars series for 99 cents. So I jumped on that because that was all exciting. So I got 5 books for 99 cents. And actually, now I know you can actually get them all for free because they're so old. But 99 cents was fine. And so I'm reading those.
Are you enjoying them?
They're neat. They're very, 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 very dated.
Old? Yes.
And so I actually want to go back now and watch the movie again because I think I'll appreciate the movie even more because I think what they did with the script, they really modernized a lot of the action and the tension, which I think is good. And I don't know if I'm going to make it past the 3rd book. I'm currently in the 3rd book, Warlord of Mars, and I think I might want to give it a break at that point. Because it's just so much coincidence that it's kind of killing me. Yeah. And then I fell to the surface of the dead planet on top of my fiance. What was she doing there? Great. Okay. Well, what a coincidence. There's only 4 people on the whole planet and you keep bumping into them. But it's neat, and it does almost read like a little history, so that's kind of cool. And I think what I'm probably going to do is pick up Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. Or Slayer, or as the case may be.
Yeah, the only
because I have heard that the book is amazing. I've heard by people who really liked the movie that the book is amazing.
Yeah, I've heard the only complaints I've heard about the movie are actually from people who read the book who said that they were disappointed it didn't follow the book closer.
Right.
So,
is there any movie where people have not complained about that?
I don't know. Well, maybe Game of Thrones, the TV series.
No, I heard people complain about that.
Well, you're right. They have complained about that. You're right.
Especially season 2.
Yeah, okay. Never mind then. So is that achievements?
That's achievements.
There we go.
You're listening to the D6 generation. Born to game.
Hey, Craig, what? You know one of the tallest miniatures out there you can buy right now?
Right now?
Yeah.
Can you get Colossals yet?
You can. They're out there. They're in your favorite gaming store. And you know what the thing? You're going to look at this Colossal. You're going to get it home. You're going to be so excited. You're going to put it together, and it's going to be awesome. And then it's going to be
Colossals, of course, are for
War Machine and Hordes, yes.
And Hordes.
Actually, they're Colossals and War Machine, and they're Gargantuans and Hordes, I think. I think it's right.
Uh-huh.
Well, I'm pretty much focused on War Machine right now because it's just awesome. They're giant robots. How can you go wrong? Anyway, so you get this thing built in your basement, right? And it's kind of like building a boat in your basement because you realize I've got this Colossal in my basement, and I now have to get it to my store and not destroy it. And really, there is only who are you going to call, Craig? Who are you going to call when you got to move a model around reliably?
You're going to call Battlefoam.com.
You are indeed. If you head on over to Battlefoam right now, the Colossal trays are out. The Kraken, the Conquest, you made it's out there. Let's say you're not a War Machine guy. Let's say you're a Games Workshop guy. Let's say you get the new Storm Eagle. All these new fighters and these planes.
Yeah.
How are you going to get these things around? They're ginormous. They're huge. Battlefoam got the trays out there right now. Head on over there. Get yourself a Storm Eagle tray. They're out. The new giant Malifaux breach bag. Like breach, like you're busting through into the dark side of Malifaux. What was the thing?
Or breach is the actual hole, how you get into the Malifaux universe.
Yeah, exactly.
It's okay. You don't remember the fluff. That's
what I'm talking about. But the thing's huge. I think this bag could carry the entire range. I don't think I'm exaggerating either. Take a look at this thing. It's ginormous. It's got little wheels on it, so you can take it to your favorite Malifaux tourney. Good stuff. Great stuff. And if you head over to Battlefoam now, head to their website, all kinds of great new news there. In addition to all of that, of course, you want to make sure you check out DualCon, which is a 3-day Warhammer 40K and War Machine Hordes event going on in, how do you pronounce it, Craig?
I don't know.
Mesa or Mesa?
It's Mesa.
I'm sure it is. Mesa, Arizona in September 28th and the 30th at the Hilton there. So check that out, too, if you're in the Arizona area or you'd like to be. Go on over and check that out and get a great
I was looking
event.
at gargantuans, I admit.
They are awesome. That giant troll, dude, that thing is fantastic.
That troll is cool.
I know. Battlefoam.com. And now, what's in the news? With the shout-out, this just in, Christopher Barnett has left Garage Hammer. Thanks for the memories, Topher. David, carry on, my wayward son. Ooh. Well, this just in also, Battlefront has just announced some tournament updates for their upcoming tournament system in 2013. And one of the big changes that's got everybody talking is that you now must use Battlefront models to play in any official Battlefront Flames of War tournaments. Not really a surprise. I think if a company goes out and does all the hard work to organize a tournament system, it's at least fair that the participants support the company and use their own models. Speaking of support, if you'd like to support a great cause, head on over to blackcrusade2012.blogspot.de. They're working hard over there to raise money this year for the Jack Vasel Memorial Fund by painting and modeling and building up a Black Crusade 40K army that they will auction off to raise money for this great charity. So head on over again to blackcrusade2012.blogspot.de to learn how you can help this great event and cause. Well, the Black Crusade is building lots of miniatures. There's also other miniature news. The War Room, that new app coming to Android and iOS soon for War Machine and Hordes, has gone gold according to Privateer Press's website. So keep an eye on the iTunes and other locations to see when the app is available for download. And speaking of software, one of our sponsors, Lone Wolf Development, has been in the news recently regarding a kerfluffle over the data files. To avoid any misunderstandings, Rob from Lone Wolf Development posted an article on dakadaka.com in their forums explaining exactly what happened. If you want to see all the details, head over to the DACA discussion forum over on dakadaka.com for the exact quote. But basically, it was a specific takedown notice to one of the sites that's actually hosting the data files. None of the data file authors were actually contacted, and they're free to keep making the files. So it's a little fuzzy, and they think actually it was just a legal action from a very specific set of GW lawyers. And they're a little confused as to why it's happening recently when Army Builder has been doing this for such a long time. So again, for all the full details, head on over to the dakadaka.com forums in DACA discussions to see Rob's posts on the topic. And it's kind of sad that Army Builder has to deal with all that. Another bit of sad news is, of course, from our friends at Fantasy Flight Games. Well, it's sort of sad, I guess, if you're like Wakeland, oh, I love Tannhauser. Yes, it's not that Tannhauser's going away. It's just that with the release of the latest bit for the German faction, Fantasy Flight has announced that they will no longer be making any new products for Tannhauser. They have not announced that they will be discontinuing the line. The product's still being manufactured and still being produced. It's just that no more new Tannhauser products in the foreseeable future. That's a shame. It's a great game. And it's kind of sentimental here on the D6G because it's the first game we ever reviewed. Summoner Wars. Yes, that finally loved card game by our friends at Plaid Hat Games. Well, guess what? It's now out on iOS. If you haven't gotten it yet, head on over. It's a great implementation. The app is free, and that gives you the Phoenix Elves to play with. But for about $7, you can unlock a bunch of decks. And it's pretty cool. Most everybody seems to really enjoy it. Great implementation. Works very well on both the iPad and the iPhone. Wakeland says that it's a little harder to read on the iPhone, but it looks fantastic on the iPad. Some reports are in that it's a little tricky to use on the iPad version 1. So you may want to try and not buy anything. Just test that on version 1 before you use it. However, it works great on the iPad 2 or 3 as well as the iPhone. Speaking of digital things, Games Workshop has announced new digital products. I remember last month they launched their new Space Marine Codex in the iBook store, along with some other products. Well, they just announced today that the updates for the Space Marine Codex for version 6 is free to download. Basically, you go to your iPad, you delete your current version, you re-download it. The iTunes store remembers what you've already bought, you don't have to pay again. And poof, it's got all the updates from the recent version 6 FAQ are now built right into the Space Marine Codex. Kind of nice. Also, the Codex for Necrons is also out on the iBook store, as well as the rules for the Orc Bombers and more painting and other cool tactical tips. So again, if you're a 40K player or a fantasy player, check out the iBook store for some new GW releases. Oh, and finally, Spartan Games has announced 2 new things. First of all, they're on Twitter. You can follow them now at Spartan Games, which is easy enough. But the bigger news is they've announced what they're calling a parts service, which is similar service to what GW calls the Bits service, which allows you to order specific parts for a specific boat, which would be great for conversions, or if you lost a little bit, or if you just want to do something wacky like make a gun ground turret or something. So check that out. There's some great-looking bits on all the lines of Spartan Games. And that's what's in the news.
You in the market for deeper D6G intel? There's only one place to go for your contact in the off weeks. What you seek is located somewhere in the lost chapters. Go to the D6generation.com for further instructions.
Welcome back. Now, I think it's safe to say that all 3 of us are very, very excited to talk about what is certainly to be one of the hottest releases this summer, Descent 2.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. That was a surprise last Gen Con. I didn't even expect them to do that.
No.
When they announced it. So it was pretty. I've been excited since then.
Yeah, and
it was neat just to see the box.
Oh, it was cool. And when Tom mentioned, we're talking to Tom about what we should talk about this episode, he kind of hinted at Descent 2, and I was like, twist my arm, Tom. So we have to talk about this. And they have put the rules up, so we should, up front, now, Craig and I have not played the game.
No.
We've only read the rules. So
Right.
This is not a review. This is just our reaction to what we've seen so far. Yep. But one of us, a lucky member of this trio.
2 of us have not, and they have just been named. But one of us has played the game, and we'll let you guess which one it is.
Is this a contest? Does someone win a prize?
Sadly. No. So, Tom, how much have you played Descent 2 so far?
I played a decent amount of it. I'm holding off on a little bit of it because I want to get together a group and do the whole thing.
Right.
Because Descent 2, I guess we're getting ahead of ourselves, but Descent 2 comes with a quest built right into it, like Road to Legends or Sea of Blood.
So you played a couple of one-off sessions and have got a good feel for it, but no campaign.
Right, because I was messing around a little bit of play testing.
Great.
Also.
Oh, great. Well, that's awesome. Okay, you'll be able to fill in the gaps here then as we go through this. But before we get into all that stuff, we probably should mention, because as Tom just mentioned, it was kind of a surprise last Gen Con because most of it, love Descent, although there has been some new dungeon crawlers lately that have maybe sort of shed a little more light on maybe some of the warts in Descent 1, because it is getting long in the tooth. But what are some of the things that we think are, Tom, what were some things where you thought that maybe Descent could have been improved on, or where were some areas where the game was starting to look a little old?
Well, for me, the biggest one if we're talking about just regular Descent, was that it was entirely too long.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
I loved it, but it got too long. And that was my 2 biggest problems were that it was too long and that the final battle was often anticlimactic because the heroes walked in with anything short of a submachine gun.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Overlord player was like, I'm going to stop you. No, you're not. And they just blew the room up and walked out.
Yeah.
Yep, that's pretty much the case. And and even in the campaigns, it's sort of the same way. We found the final battles were anticlimactic. Either they were one-sided towards the Overlord or one-sided towards the heroes, usually the heroes. And game length was certainly one of the reasons I never got the original to the table. It was just in a hold. It wasn't Twilight Imperium, but it was darn close in terms of game length. What about now? Some of the things I thought that bothered me about it, or not bothered, but just started to get a little as the game expanded. It sort of suffered from expansionitis. There were so many different powers and different keywords, and you didn't have to go.
Oh my God, those summary sheets were huge.
Even with the summary sheets from the awesome summary sheets of Headless Hollow, you'd have like 3 or 4 pages to flip back and forth through to find what does fly do again versus soar, and how does that all work? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think go ahead, Tom.
Never mind. I'll mention that in a bit. Go ahead.
Okay. And I think they're having some interlocking issues with certain rules too. Like every once in a while, you get into a pair of rules that just didn't make a lot of sense. So the interactions got a little weird. But the other problem that contributed to play length, I thought, and I don't know, Tom, if you noticed this with your groups, but as the heroes got really, really powerful, they had so many different options with their surges when they rolled them, that they could spend like 5 or 10 minutes calculating what their possible choices were with all the surges they got.
Right.
Yeah, the game would get a little mathy, which to me happens in a lot of RPGs. After a certain point, you'll say, okay, wait a minute, if I do this, I can get an extra 2 points. And if you were imagining this scenario and the guy's swinging his sword at you, time does not freeze, so you can sit down and pull out your little spreadsheet computer. But people insist on doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, we had guys with little cheat sheet size pieces of paper with all their information on them, and it just told them what to do. Where if my opponent has high armor, choose these choices. If my opponent has, it was kind of funny. The other thing I noticed that always kind of was, and I usually, I don't know about you guys, I almost always play the Overlord. I like to play the Overlord. So Tom, are you mostly an Overlord player or a hero player?
I think I might have played heroes one time in my life.
Wow.
Yeah, but you're so.
I always like playing the Overlord because I'm in games. I tend to be the game nanny anyway.
Yeah.
Where I'm helping make sure the game moves along, and that's what the Overlord player does.
Yeah, and it has that little paragraph. The most experienced player should be the Overlord, and that's usually me. So, but I don't know. Did you find this, Tom? The Overlord's objectives in Descent 1, whether you're playing the standard game or the campaign, for the most part, your objective is when you're actually in the dungeon fighting. It's very simple. Kill the heroes as often as you can to gain conquest or remove their conquest, right?
That's what the book wrote. My goal was always give them a good game.
Right.
Which sometimes was hard to do because they got so powerful. But I always played, I know people on the internet disagree and say you should, try to kill them as much as possible. I played like I was a real DM of a role-playing game. Although I suppose there's some dungeon masters out there who try to kill their people off as much as possible too. But usually your goal is to make sure everyone has a good time, and that's the way I play it. As the rules are written, though, yes, you're supposed to kill people, and that's it. Kill the weak mage.
Well, it gets complicated in the campaigns a little bit because you're right. If you're playing it as a competitive board game, which is technically how it's designed, the Overlord's job is to get as much conquest as possible. The other thing in the campaign is if the Overlord doesn't get as much conquest as he can, the heroes will streak way ahead of him, and again, they're in the late silver, early gold phases. It just feels like a cakewalk for the heroes and nothing challenges them. So as the Overlord, the best way to do that is to really kill the easiest guy to kill. And what ends up happening is, I don't know, in our games a lot it happens, where the Overlord will hunt down the weakest player, and to the point where, I don't know, Tom, if you ever used this, is actually a tool called the Descent Dungeon Tracker online or something like that. And it's a web-based tool that lets you track your campaign. You can use it at the table. And it kept track. It makes little graphs of the kill counts for each player in your campaign. And we would track, Ian died again. Ian died again. Ian died. So it kind of gets, which is funny, but also not so great for the player that's always dying.
Huh. I had not heard about this.
Yeah, you have to check that out. I don't know if they've adapted it for 2 yet, but it was a very handy tool and kind of funny to watch the numbers. So those are some of my issues before we got to the campaign shortcomings. Any other core thoughts you had, Tom, on what could have been improved?
Well, I wouldn't say there was anything that I was pretty happy with the core campaign, except it just felt odd going from zero to hero in one campaign. You came in and you were carrying a stick, and then when you left, you were wearing the armor of the light and the sword of truth and righteousness and destruction, and it just was odd, and that happened in the space of 6 hours. Yep,
that's actually a great point. My brother, who's a big RPGer. I could never get him to enjoy the game because of 2 issues. One was that exact one where, in the core game, it's literally one dungeon. You're going through one level of a dungeon, or maybe 2 levels, but usually it's one. And you're right, you go from like a level 1 fighter to like a level 20 guy in one level. It just felt wrong. And the other thing he had a problem with was that broke his willing suspension of disbelief was the idea that every time you die, you just teleport back to town and come back in again. Right. Those 2 things kind of got to his D&D sensibilities, if you will.
Actually, there was one more thing that's problematic with the game, and that was spawning / line of sight.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Because the Overlord could spawn creatures if they were a certain amount of spaces away from where people could see them, and so people were running idiotically dumb formations so that the Overlord couldn't spawn stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and God forbid they got those little familiars, too. Remember those little familiars that could see around corners and stuff? So there's...
hates those familiars and wishes he could kill them all.
Yes, he does. I think too.
And it's one of the few things you couldn't touch as an Overlord.
Yes, virtual fist bump, Tom. I'm right there with you. So the other thing, and the last thing, not to make this a giant hate, because we love Descent 1. Don't get us wrong. We love this game.
Yeah. Don't stop listening, people.
Don't wait. We're going to get there. Then they added the campaigns, which when they first came out, and even now, they're really some of the most, I think, Tom, you're on record as saying, some of the most amazing expansions ever done for a board game, right, in terms of Road to Legend in particular, right?
Yeah, that was it blew my mind that they were able to it changed the game more than I've ever seen an expansion change a game before, and it cured most of my problems with the game.
Yeah, the biggest cure was it invented the short play session. You could just take one of those little scenario cards and play a quick game of Descent in like an hour, which was probably one of the coolest parts of the whole thing. But there were a couple little issues. The campaign itself was epic. I actually did play one from the beginning to the end. We played every Tuesday night, and it took us 10 months. Yeah. So it's not a short endeavor to do the campaign. And also the scenarios with the lieutenants, I don't know, this is sort of on the internet a lot, but we ran into this too. Sometimes the lieutenant battles weren't very balanced. And so you get scenarios where it was kind of weak. I don't know, Tom, did you ever find that at all? Or do your lieutenants always have a good job?
Well, at the beginning, the lieutenants kind of just beat the snot out of the heroes, and then after a while, it's like, here's my big bad lieutenant, and he's running away from you because you're so much more powerful than he is. But I still thought the lieutenants was a good idea. Yes. I like the idea of a named monster who runs away to live another day.
Mm-hmm. And as we'll see in the
Commander,
no, I think that was brilliant, and I think you can tell in little foreshadowing, they definitely kept that concept in Descent too, which is awesome. And then the biggest disappointment we had, and literally this forced one of our players to write a nasty letter to Fantasy Flight, was the final battles in the campaign are not always epic. We played the Sea of Blood one where I was the pirate.
That's because you picked the pirate. See, I
did. Well,
looked at the bad guys, and I picked one I thought would give a mega battle.
But Tom, I'm playing
cool.
I'm playing in Sea of Blood. How can I not play the Pirate King who's got a giant undead ship?
Yeah, that's true. It did sound cool.
If he's not the best bad guy to play, then something's wrong. I would think so. But we got to the end and it was broken. I actually destroyed them
very, very quickly
in about 15 minutes.
Yeah. And which is very, very quickly for an 8-month campaign.
Yeah. So basically, the fundamentals were cool. I think the Descent fundamentals are fantastic. But I think what started happening to me in particular was now that we have more market choice, the other dungeon crawling games that are a lot of fun and also play shorter, I started turning to those instead of Descent. But happily remembering Descent, but looking at other things, and so that's why I got excited when this idea of Descent 2 came out.
Yeah, I have to say my first reaction to it was like, why? I wanted a new expansion.
Right. Yeah.
I wanted another Road to Legend campaign that added more monsters and such. And I did see Kevin Wilson's name on the rules, and I thought, what are they doing? And the box was half the size.
Right, that's interesting too. Yeah.
And so I was leery, but then I thought of all the other second editions that Fantasy Flight has done, and I can't think of one that is worse than the first edition. Does anyone even say Twilight Imperium 1 anymore?
No, that's a good point.
Or Runebound. What happened to Runebound? It's gone. Runebound 2 is where it's at, and I think. I'm calling it the same thing's going to happen here.
I totally agree with you. Let's tell our listeners why we think that is, right? So, Descent 2, Tom, can you summarize what's in the new box? Because it is, as you said, it's smaller. What are people looking forward to in a smaller, more affordable box? But there's going to be less in there, right? Is that a bad thing?
Yeah, it's hard for me to compare to the original Descent. I remember what I got in the original Descent, but now that I have everything mixed up, it's hard to remember what was how much stuff. But if I remember, the original Descent didn't fill that giant coffin box.
No.
And I suspect, and I have to ask Christian Peterson this, but I suspect that they've phased those coffin boxes out. I think they're gone.
I think they are too.
With Dust and Descent cutting down to the smaller box, but we'll see. But if I remember correctly, when you bought that big box, it filled just a little over half of it. So I think there's almost the same amount of stuff.
Yeah, maybe. I think the monster count is definitely smaller, but I don't know if it's it's more than half though.
I don't care if the monster count's smaller because they're introducing an upgrade kit, so I can use all the monsters I already have.
Well, that's what's brilliant. I think that's an important point to make, right? So in Descent 2, none of the plastic is the same as what you've owned before, right? All the monsters are new.
That's correct.
No Beastmen unless you got old Descent. I mean, there might be a Beastmen expansion, but right now there's no Beastmen in there. There's other things in there, and all the heroes are new too. Correct?
They are.
So basically, you're expanding it's kind of an expansion, if you will, for plastic anyway.
It is. What they have done is in each scenario, when you go to the top as the Overlord, it will tell you what monsters you have. So, for example, it will say goblins one group, because there's goblins in this one, and then it will say 2 open groups. And you say, well, what does that mean? And at the top of the scenario, it will show 3 icons. And if those icons are on a monster card, you can use that monster in that scenario. So you will very easily be able to use the old monsters in these scenarios.
Oh, sweet.
They may not be the main characters because, you don't want to tell people that they have to get these old monsters. They don't.
Right.
But I like the fact, that when I'm looking at a monster card, it says, what kind of like what terrain. Each monster card usually has 1 or 2 symbols on it, so they can go in different types of terrain.
Oh, cool.
And then that's the scenario. If it's in a cave, you're not going to get something that doesn't go in caves.
Oh,
ever.
Sweet. So basically, if I get the upgrade kit, I'll have new cards for my old Beastmen, and they're going to have icons on them that are going to tell me which of the new scenarios I can use as Beastmen in. So
I'll tell you one thing right now with these cards. It's one of the things that you'll like with the new monster cards is that on the back of the card, it tells you the special abilities and what they do for that monster.
See, that is brilliant, and that's one of the mentions. I had that a little later, but there's a lot of graphic design changes in here that I think are brilliant. And one of them is, as you just mentioned, Tom, is there's very few keywords in the new book. I think there's like 5 in the new Descent core rules. The rest of them are going to appear on either the Adventurer's cards or the Monsters cards, right?
Yeah.
So now you can just flip the card over and, there it is. There's all the special rules I need to know, full paragraph of the text. No worries, right?
Yes, and that's a big deal.
Even to the point of the effects. I noticed this too. There's now effect cards, right, and effect tokens. So if your character's poison or a monster's poison, you put the poison token on him, but then there's a poison card on the table that has the rules for poison on it, right?
That's correct.
Which is also brilliant because now it's graphically right there on the table, but also it lets them introduce new effects. And if that's in the dungeon, you just put the card out there so everybody knows what it's going to do. Some tokens next to it, and boom, you can have as few or as many effects involved in the game that you want without having to flip through rule books to find them. I think that's also a pretty smart move.
Mm-hmm. You were talking about components. One of the areas that's definitely smaller in this version is the terrain tiles that you put on top of the terrain. Like in the original game, there was always these columns and furniture and different pieces that you would put on top when you were setting up. There's not nearly as much of that in here at all.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Now, how do they do they because of that are the rooms like more intricate to maintain kind of that like line of sight issue, or did they just make it more simple by removing all of those obstructions?
There's obstructions on the tiles. The tiles are definitely different now. They're not another curve. But they simplified it. And I think I'll just say that right now. This is the theme of this game is streamline, streamline, streamline. And that was one of the ways of streamlining. I can say as an Overlord, it's nice to not have to set up 600 pieces every time a new room is revealed or whatever.
Well, that's nice. And that'll speed up your gameplay because your setup time. Now, do the tiles interlock, Tom, or do you have to use the new tiles now in Descent 2?
I don't, I keep meaning to do that. I have not yet pulled out an old tile to see if they fit. You know what? You guys talk. I'll go do that right now.
It does look like they have a similar style of puzzle piece. But.
Yeah, it looks like they will connect together. But Tom mentioned a couple things about the monster cards. He mentioned groups, and one of the interesting new concepts about the monsters is that they no longer scale based on player count with their stats. So if you have a monster card, it's not like there's 3 different versions of that monster card.
How do they scale, Russ?
They scale based on groups. So now the card will say, you have a group of kobolds aren't in the new game, but let's say it's kobolds. You have a group of kobolds.
They could be in the new game if you have the expansion pack.
That's right. So what it says is, depending on the bottom, there's icons with a number of player icons next to them, and that's the size of the group.
Right.
So what I like about that a lot is that now you'll start to be able to memorize stats. Because before, even if you kind of knew a Beastman stats, I'm playing 3 players today. I don't normally play 3 players. I got to look the stats up again. But now you're going to start to learn, Kobold throws this many dice. And you're just going to know it. And whether there's 3 or 2 or 5 of them is going to depend on the players in the game, which is really nice.
My one concern with that, though, is that I do wonder if when you have these open groups and you can pick one, that you might find that you're always going to pick one monster over another monster.
Okay, right. So there's going to be like a stronger one that you think is going to be the go-to version.
It's possible. I don't know if that will happen, and hopefully they balanced it. But I remember thinking, I'm definitely taking this monster over that one. But I haven't played it enough to know that I'm incorrect. And by the way, the tiles do not connect. We have a Pitchcar Carabande situation.
Okay, so they do not connect. So that's interesting. So your tiles are not backward compatible. So
they're slightly smaller.
No, okay, interesting. Okay, well that's a little bit. I guess it's a bit of bad news, but I guess you can.
I think the squares are the same size. The connections don't fit together right.
Interesting. So that is a conscious decision.
Yeah, clearly.
That's interesting.
That is interesting. Well, that's good to know. Thank you, Tom, for that field experiment right here live on the air. You heard it first.
Live.
Right, there it is.
But
we're going to Tom Vasel live to find out whether the pieces fit together.
But you know what? I think that's a reasonable decision because the scenarios here are all pre-done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't need the old pieces. And to tell people they have to go hunt down old pieces for stuff would be awfully annoying for people who are getting into it. Right. This is a way to get new people in the game.
Right.
Right. But if you want to do your own thing, then you're kind of limited to either using the new pieces or the old pieces rather than kind of put them together.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Even with the upgrade pack, I have a whole box. I think one of the expansion boxes I have that's full of all the plastic monsters. That's all it's in the box. Mm-hmm. It's just jam-packed with them. And then I got cards. Then I have the main box, the big one, the original one, and that's full of just the terrain. That's worthless to me now. Right. I don't need any of that. Right. And then I have a really cool case, which my wife informed me was a makeup case after I bought it. But she wasn't around when I bought it, so I didn't know. But I have this makeup case full of tiles and status effects and all hit point counters and all, and I don't need any of it.
Yeah.
So for some dissent people, there's going to be the outcry of, but all my old stuff is useless, and and you know how we are as gamers. You're never going to throw that piece away, even though you'll never use it again.
Yeah. Right. Well, is it really useless? Because if you're that innovative guy and you want to make your own dungeon, and you just said the square sizes are the same, I could use all old components, make a dungeon up, use the new rules, and just come up with my own scenario, right? I mean, that's
true. It's just that I guess the people who would complain about it are the kind of people who would do that. So yeah, you're right.
Right. I guess. So we'll see. Well, that's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about some of the new rules here in particular. So let's look at what's new for the heroes.
Oh,
because it's pretty awesome. So hero creation. First of all, we should say that now this sort of addresses one of Tom's big issues, right? Which is there's no longer, you don't really level up and go from 0 to hero in one dungeon anymore. So there's really in the game, if you're not using the campaign rules, there is no leveling. You just start with a hero, you play, you're done, you do a little adventure, awesome. So when you create your hero, you're going to grab your hero card, and that's going to have your hero is going to say he's an archetype, right? And that archetype is going to dictate which class deck you can choose for your hero. So basically, you're going to choose, is he I don't know, what are some examples of classes, Tom, that are in there?
Well, for example, if you're a magic user, you can choose between two different decks. And I'm assuming that they're going to increase the number of decks as the game goes by. But for one of them was a Necromancer, and the other one was a Rune Master.
Okay, cool.
So you can pick between those. The Necromancer one is neat because it comes with a familiar who I can actually beat the snot out of as the Overlord, but you can keep buffing that familiar up. So pretty soon he's your fighter, and you're running him around. He gets killed. You're like, all right, I guess I got to waste time and summon him again. But it's still neat.
That is awesome.
And it's a very different feel than the Rune Master, who's all about just shooting magic. But there's two different decks that you can pick for that archetype. You said there was 4 of them.
Yeah.
And I believe there's 2 characters for each in the base game. And I'm assuming that when they do the upgrade kit, every single character will be one of those 4 types. Cool. I believe they're your typical cleric. They're your ranged,
the warrior,
warrior, and wizard.
Nice. Warrior, healer, mage, and scout is the way they've done it in the rulebook.
I'm sorry. I always forget what the things
okay.
are.
I'm cheating. I'm looking at it as I speak.
It's tank.
You're a tank and DPS.
Tank, buffer,
controller. So now what's interesting about these decks, right, is that in your deck is all your starting equipment, right, plus several different skills, but you're going to only start with one skill, right? And Tom, do you get to pick that skill, or is there always a specific starting skill? For
No, there's a starting skill. When you level up for the first time, that's when you
get another one.
You get another. You don't even have to take one when you level up. You can kind of save your
XP,
points to get a better one. But I'll tell you what, this certainly saves time when people sitting there with that starting equipment from town.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll say, just buy a sword.
Right.
And they're sitting there, well, maybe I need these daggers. No, just take the sword. Now you get your starting equipment, and it makes sense. It's the kind that matches your character.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is these decks, the rules suggest that you play with one of each archetype, and I would suggest that also.
Right.
But that makes it nice because when you get a new piece of equipment, it's kind of obvious who should get it.
Right. That is awesome, and I think it's a great idea too because you're right. It does reduce all that hemming and hawing over that, but it also reduces setup time for picking your skills because before it was random. You discard one, you get another one, you keep that. That's all gone now.
They did to new players. What does this mean?
Right. You got to learn it all at the beginning to make any kind of sense. Right. And sort of now there's some other little minor things, but sort of the last big thing for heroes here is their feat. Right, so there was in Descent 1, there was an expansion that introduced feats, and there were a whole other deck because the game didn't have enough decks of cards in it. It was a whole other deck of cards. That's all. The feat system is totally different now. So your character sheet, really, in addition to the core stats being different, like movement and stamina and their basic defense and that kind of stuff for the character being different for each character, you also got a special feat on the front of the card, and when you flip the card over, the feat is basically expired, and the feat is something you use once per encounter, which is basically one dungeon map, right?
Right. And the dungeon maps aren't that big, but it's nice. It's that once. It really reminds me of the feats that you have, in the Dungeons and Dragons.
Right. It's your D&D daily or your utility power, right? In D&D 4, right? Yeah. Exactly.
But you also did mention that the heroes also have 4 more stats on them.
Oh, right. Yeah, go ahead.
Have 4 attribute stats on the bottom, and those are used for different tests during the game, often for cards that the Overlord will play, for like a trap. So some heroes can get out of those traps more easily. And I like that because in the original one, usually it was just a roll a die and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that sneaky thief who normally the Overlord would be dropping the boulders on, he might think twice about that because the thief might have a better chance of evading that particular trap.
Right. That's a great point.
Might, knowledge, willpower, and awareness.
Cool.
We will never call them that because we just use the icons there because no one can ever remember what each one stands for.
That's okay. Good graphic design, right? You can tell what's going on by the. So do the Overlord cards basically say have the icon and says make a icon test for this kind of thing or whatever?
Yeah. Here's a poison dart trap. It says play this card when a hero opens a door. He tests either awareness or might, and the Overlord chooses which one. And then if he passes, blah blah blah. If he fails, he suffers a hit point and 2 fatigue. And I like that because it makes those stats worthwhile. At the same time, you don't have to think about them all the time.
Right.
You just use it when a test comes up.
And it gives you even more of an RPG feel, right? Now your these secondary skills are kicking in, which is kind of neat. That's great. And now the other thing that's a little different for heroes before we move on to the Overlord changes is leveling now. So leveling is there's no more black dice, right? They're gone.
Yeah,
so,
I kind of miss them, rolling, chucking lots of dice. And then I remembered having to count up all the different surges, and it's okay. Goodbye, dice.
Yeah, that's the big fix to the surge dilemma, right? Is basically reducing the dice count means it's going to reduce the number of surge combinations you have and all that. So basically, when heroes level up now, you're really, if you're playing the campaign mode to level, you're going to be able to go shopping. So you're going to increase your equipment, just like the original Descent, but also you're going to get XP to buy more of those skills from your deck, and each skill card's got some number of XP cost on the bottom, and you're going to either save up for the grand skill you want or just spend as fast as you can and get as many cheap skills as you want, right? That kind of approach.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's pretty much anything I missed on new hero hotness there, Tom?
No, except for once, this won't matter to most people, but I actually like the artwork better on these. It doesn't look like the pants store was existent in this world. I actually know how to wear armor. I have to hide the game from my wife.
Yeah.
I really think the artwork's good. I'm very impressed with it.
Oh, good.
It's a different artist, I think.
Red Sonja's not there anymore with her...
No, I miss her with her unbalanced body.
Yes. So let's talk about what's new for the Overlord, because the Overlord's life has gotten a little simpler, but also more interesting too in many ways. So first of all, the very, very first thing I noticed was right in the book, it says the Overlord's deck is 15 cards. I'm like, what? Because it used to be like, 50 or something, or 60, and whenever you went through the deck, you got threat. Well, the second thing you notice is there's no threat. What? Right?
Yep. So great. I like the not having to count out threat all the time is a nice change.
That does speed things up. Now, of course, that means, though, that the Overlord cards cost nothing to play, right? You just play them as you need them.
Right, but you have to be careful because you're not getting nearly as many.
Right, that's one thing that did change. So you get, each turn, the Overlord draws one card. Now, his starting hand size is equal to player count. But after that, he draws one card a turn, period. Right? So you're going to want to save that hand for the right moment when you want to, because you can play as many as you want in a turn, right? So if you want to wait for that big moment and bust out 3 and suddenly one guy's stuck in goo and the other gets hit by poison dart and the third guy gets stuck in a trap, you can do that, but you saved your cards up for several turns.
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead, Tom.
One of the things that the deck is smaller is because you've taken out the spawning cards.
Mm-hmm.
Spawning is done completely differently now, where you basically can bring in different creatures based on the scenario. Will tell you what kind of creatures you can bring in each turn. And so you can bring them in, and they come in on specific spawning points on the map.
Nice. That's awesome.
So that helps simplify that whole process, and it cuts out one of my problems I had with the original game.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do you spend to spawn monsters? Sorry, Craig.
That's okay.
Do they just spawn? Do the monsters just spawn at a regular rate, or do you pay some resource to get them?
Well, right. They're called reinforcements. So, for example, in one of the scenarios here, it says, at the end of each Overlord turn, he may place one monster from one of his open groups on either the entrance or the exit, respecting group limits.
Okay.
Because, again, you have group limits depending on how many heroes you're fighting.
Mm-hmm.
So I can add one monster per turn. Mm-hmm. But since they start at the entrance or exit, you still usually... It's not as overwhelming as it sounds. It's much more controlled, and the heroes know what's going to happen. The Overlord knows what's going to happen, and it's easier to work with that way. It's not like, a dragon just appeared in the middle of the room.
Right. Right.
I guess there was mirrors or something.
So, Craig, we keep cutting you off. What would you want to ask?
Well, I was going to say, one good thing about the threat was really, as the name suggests, that feeling of impending doom as you saw that stack building and building and building, and you knew that the Overlord was planning something nefarious right around the corner. Does the game now just not have that particular element to it? Is there some other way that the pressure is on, so to speak, as you feel the threat level, quote unquote, rise?
Well, I think, I guess we might be jumping ahead here, but I think that's gone because the whole pressure is now the specific scenario. You have a specific goal that you have to get done. Get that done. Yeah. And so you have to do that. The threat's more of an annoyance than anything else.
Gotcha.
Right. Because you remember before
accomplishing your goals.
Yeah, that was interesting. That was in the first Descent. There was no real Overlord pressure that would ever stop you, except that your conquest was running out. Right. There was no, oh my God, that skeleton's about to destroy the treasure we need to get, or whatever. That element didn't exist. So that's kind of interesting. We'll get to that in a second. Actually, we're getting there right now. So let's talk about this, Tom, because this is something that's talked about in the rulebook that's online, but unfortunately, Fantasy Flight's not put the scenario book up. So you're one of the few people that are privy to how this works right now.
Right, but, and I don't want to give away everything, but let me give you an example of one scenario. In one scenario, you're going in and you're rescuing a specific guy from prison. Okay, so you put these tokens in this prison, and one of them is the guy, but you don't know which guy it is. Mm-hmm. And the Overlord doesn't know which guy it is either, because he just captured a bunch of guys. So he has to send his monsters into that room, grab the guys, bring them back to his main dungeon room, and then interrogate them to figure out which one's the one he's looking for.
Oh, nice.
The heroes are trying to get in, grab the right guy, and get him out. So there's combat, but there's also specific scenario. Mm-hmm. And if the Overlord, quote-unquote, wins, it then kind of branches to another scenario and often affects the next scenario. So sometimes you want something, or, however many people you get off the map, those guys will show up in the next scenario. Because they went back to warn their master, and now they're there with him.
Oh, cool.
Stuff like that, I think, is just very, very enjoyable. But because as the Overlord, I felt like I wasn't just having to kill people. The very first scenario, the Overlord has a bunch of guys who he's sending to a battle, and he has to run them across the board and out a secret passageway. And the heroes have to stop these guys. So they're actually the killers.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be peaceful.
I'm just trying to let my monsters out. Let them be free.
These are weak little monsters, and they're trying to kill them all. But it's an interesting scenario, and so far I haven't run into a scenario that I didn't think was pretty well balanced.
Nice. Well, that's fantastic. Cool. Does that address your concern, Craig, about pending doom?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I like the addition of the story elements that rather than just a generic feeling of threat.
Well, don't get me wrong. It's never going to be a role-playing game.
Right. No.
But it's the closest a board game has come to it, I think.
Great. Now, one other thing we should talk about for, mentioning tactical abilities there. So there's a lot of Overlord tactical decisions now based on the scenario, right? Should I have some monsters instead of going to kill heroes, guarding the door to my interrogation room and guard that dungeon more carefully so the heroes can't get those guys out of there? But other tactical choices now, before the Overlord never had to worry about surges. If he got a pair of surges, great, he got another threat token. Well, threat's gone. But now what they've done, which is really interesting, is monsters now all have specific surge abilities on their cards. So now the Overlord has monsters that are basically like mini heroes. They can do cool things.
Right, like the Etten, when he rolls a surge, he'll do 2 more damage.
Oh, that's awesome.
A pretty simple thing. But other guy, when he gets a surge, might poison you or knock you back. Different things like that, or pierce 2. So I like that. Again, you're sitting there as the Overlord. You're much more excited about your dice now. Give me some surges.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's also cool about that is it's not as guaranteed. Before, every time I hit you with a giant, I always could knock you back. And now the heroes could pray, maybe he won't roll a surge and he won't knock me back, kind of thing. So there's that little bit. It gives everybody a little bit of hope every time the dice rolls. And as you said, makes those dice rolls that much more exciting, which is, again, closer to an RPG feel, right?
Yeah, I think so. And on that same line there, I think the armor dice helps out in that.
Yeah, let's talk about the armor dice in a minute. So one thing they got rid of in the game is armor no longer is just a simple number you have to that reduces your damage. Instead, it's a pool of dice you roll. So heroes all have an armor dice pool, and monsters all have an armor dice pool. And of course, equipment will increase or decrease your armor dice pool, right? And so how do the armor dice work now, Tom?
Well, basically, when you're being attacked, you roll armor dice, and however many shields you roll is how much you block, but there's different kinds of armor dice. Some have more shields on sides than others, but they all have blank sides, which is great because before you could, as an Overlord, it happened with heroes. Mm-hmm. You would get the tank, and he would get his armor up to 5. Mm-hmm. And I would say, well, what's the point of me even rolling the dice here?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Why should I send this guy to attack you? But those little guys should still have a chance, and they do now.
Right.
And I think, and even the heroes, they're going up against a big guy, they might just get that shot in.
Right.
That's fun.
That's brilliant. I remember the exact feeling as Overlord as well. You get in there, and the hero would have 5 or somehow 6 armor, and you would just look at him and go, I'm just going to beat up the thief more because I can't hurt you. It's nothing I can do. So that's a great feature, and again, it also makes the game simpler, but adds a little more dynamic elements to it. And one other thing, we already talked about the monsters come in groups now. So the Overlord just commands his whole groups and has to move all of his groups together. So basically, you have to move like all your spiders before you can go on and move your giant, right? You can't do one spider, one giant, one spider, or anything like that anymore, right? It's got to be the whole group.
I mean, it's not really that big of a deal. Yeah. I don't think. But because the whole group dynamic has made the game simpler. Mm-hmm. For the Overlord, I have a group of these, I have a group of these. How many do I have of each one? Depends on how many heroes. There's the white and the red ones like there was in the original game. And on the card, the white stuff's at the top and the red stuff's at the bottom. So it's real easy to tell who has what stats.
Right. And the only big change to the monster cards, there are a second set of monster cards for Act 2, right? So if you're playing in the campaign mode, if you're playing the regular game, just we're going to play one dungeon for an hour real quick and have fun and be done, then you never have to worry about the Act 2 cards. But if you're playing in the campaign mode, right, then after you do some certain number of missions, you switch to Act 2, and now all the monsters are that much tougher, right? Is that basically how that works?
Right. For example, the Etten, in Act 1, he rolls a blue and a red die, and in Act 2, he rolls a blue and 2 red dice.
There you go.
And his hit points go up to 7 from 5, and he rolls a little bit better defensive die. And that's the white Etten. And, so it's not a big deal, and basically you just put the whole Act 1 cards aside, bring in the whole Act 2 cards, and you're done. It's not upgrade these guys to gold level. Wait,
right.
which gold card do I need? I like that. Don't get me wrong, that was a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
But I'm glad it's a little simpler now.
Yeah, again, I was with you. It's brilliant, but it was also fiddly, and now it's much simpler. Now, and you'd mentioned before, Tom, that you liked lieutenants, And it looks like lieutenants are a permanent part of the game now, even in one-off missions. So in some quests, there will be a lieutenant, right? And he's got his own card. And he's the exception to the monster rule where his stats do vary based on player count. So your lieutenant's power is going to be different depending on how many players are at the table, right?
Yeah, and this Lord Merrick Farrow is still around.
He is awesome.
Okay, well, I mean, I guess that's good for the Overlord. But yeah, and that's there. You know, it's just neat to have these. I still wish there was miniatures for these guys.
There were. Yeah. They did do them for a while there. Did you get any of those?
You had to buy them.
Well, yes. That's true.
I always thought if I buy that miniature, he's going to die in the next scenario.
That's
I know
true.
it, and I bought it for nothing.
I actually own some of those miniatures, so I'm kind of excited to be able to use them again, and that the same guys are back. So that's good news.
Well, no, I didn't say all the guys were back.
Ah, boo. But that's great. So that's cool for the Overlord now, right? He's a guy, and I guess I'm sure in the campaign some of them make recurring appearances. I guess if they don't die, I assume, or whatever. So
right, and I think as you go by, they help tell the story.
Right, which is cool.
You're dealing with these guys.
And as you're kind of listening to this, you're probably figuring out the expansion opportunities for this thing are crazy, right? Because you create a new lieutenant card, you create a couple new mechanics, new scenarios, in a book, and now you've got a whole new campaign you can play, which is brilliant.
Every expansion is going to be a new campaign. I'm sure of it.
Oh yeah,
new campaign, new monsters, new
Yep.
Just a little bit more. They wouldn't have to add any new stuff. I mean, mechanics or any new way to play the game.
Right.
Just give me. And I wouldn't be surprised if they sold hole-in-one games.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing is now it's also modular now, like these status cards, right? If you want to have this scenario, Clash of the Titans, you put a Medusa in there, you put a stone status card in there, and then you have all the, you put one new room in there for her lair, and then a couple of scenarios that have the story, and boom, you're done. So it's really a very brilliant. I think you're right. It's going to all be like new campaign with monsters that can interlock or be separate, and you can do just like the D&D games. You can do the whole same module. So let's get to the core mechanics, because the core mechanics are sort of mostly the same, but there's a few little changes that are kind of interesting. One of the ones I thought was interesting, and I think it's more intuitive than anything else, but in the original Descent, you started with a bunch of stamina tokens, and as your stamina went down, you took the tokens off your player mat. But now you have a stamina stat, and you put fatigue tokens on yourself to represent yourself getting tired, right? So it's sort of backwards. Not that it matters.
It's always
much.
Confusing. At the beginning of every game I play, I ask players, "Do you want to put the stuff on and take it off?
Or put it off and take
You
it
want to
off."
start with nothing and add it?" Because some people like different ways.
Yeah.
I prefer to add it as you get hit.
Right.
But another big change is that they took out the activation markers for the heroes, the ready and rests and stuff.
Yeah, which makes it much simpler. Yeah.
And one of those was curing your fatigue. And that they just simplified that whole thing down. It was, yes, the ready action was a neat thing to do, but it wasn't necessary.
I agree. And the other thing they made nice was they had the little activation tokens that showed whether your hero is activated or not. And now they've, again, to the graphic design, they've given each hero a card, which is a quick reference card, which also is flippable to show whether you've activated or not, right? So that's
true, but I still don't understand how people can have a problem with that.
we used to get
Did
get
I
confused.
go yet or not? Yeah.
I don't know. We had that problem. Well, because if one guy's taken 20 minutes and he's got, spent 30 minutes figuring out his searches, you forget who's already gone.
You never had a problem with people not knowing if they'd gone. You had a problem with people not flipping their little token.
That's true.
That's the problem. And thus you didn't remember whether or not they'd gone.
The groundskeeper in me was, always. So, but
you'd get a little antsy too. He'd be like, "Please flip your tokens." You'd make these little passive aggressive announcements.
Well, it's important to keep people.
I'm not pointing to anyone individually, but Craig, please flip your tokens.
I'm just saying. The biggest change to the core rules are how heroes die now, right? So the biggest change is when a hero's health goes to 0, he's now no longer transported back to town. He is knocked down. You actually replace the model with a token because that way you can walk over him. And his stamina goes to maximum, or he's fully fatigued, depending how you look at it, right? And then he's out. His next activation, he can stand up, or another hero can spend an action to revive him. And in either case, when he revives, he rolls a couple dice to see how much health he starts with and how much fatigue he recovers, right? So when he's getting back up again, he's not fully healthy. It's not like when in Old Descent where you die, you go back to town, you walk back through the portal, and you're good as new.
Not only are you good as new, but you usually have a couple more potions.
You may have to go shopping while you're at it, right?
Right. And one of the things that you didn't mention about these actions is they took out the stupid terminology that was there initially.
Oh, yes.
what was when you made 2 attacks, that was called something.
Yeah.
And now it's just, you can move an attack or attack and move. You just take 2 actions. It wasn't, well, now I'm taking the move attack action.
Right. Yep.
Or the double attack. You can still attack in the middle of a move, which is nice, but there's no more explaining the 4 different categories and how they were pretty much the same anyway.
Exactly. Yep. The other thing I noticed, Tom, and I don't know if this was a big effect in your game, but this is a big thing we used to have problems with, was that opening a door for a hero is now an action instead of spending movement.
Yes, I like that. I never understood.
That was huge because there was these characters with acrobatics and drinking speed potions and everything. All of a sudden, they could speed through half the dungeon, right, in one move. So that's a real nice thing because making it an action really slows down how many doors you can open a turn.
Right. Although there isn't that many doors to begin with.
And maybe that's why they had to do it, because the dungeons are smaller. I don't know. Also, we mentioned this already, Conquest is gone, so that's a big core change. Now you're focused on your objective for your mission. Let's see, we talked about the Overlord changes already. The Overlord draws only 1 card per turn now, and he moves his monsters in groups, which is not a big change. We talked about armor dice already. There's no black dice. We talked about that already. So I want to ask you this, Tom, because you played now. So the surges work the same in that, you roll a surge, there's some abilities on your cards, you choose which abilities to apply to your surges. One little new thing is that if you have surges left over that you can't apply to or don't feel like applying to, you can use them to recover fatigue, which is nice as a hero. But does that speed up with the reduction of the black dice, Tom? Did you find that were people still getting analysis paralysis on what they should do with their surges, or was it going pretty quick?
No, I think it goes a lot quicker. I mean, you're going to always have people sit there and say, "Oh, I got a surge and I have 2 different things I can do with it."
Right.
I'm like, come on, guys, just pick the most obvious one. But another thing about surges is you can't use them multiple times unless they're listed on the card multiple times. So if it says surge plus 1 damage, you can't say, "Oh, I have 65 surges, I have 65 extra damage."
Oh, nice.
No. So, but some weapons will have it printed twice. Mm-hmm. So then you can use it twice if you get 2 surges. So that's nice too. Because I'm using 3 surges for this, 4 surges for that, and 17 and a half surges to do this. I'm like,
You know what else is, I just realized this. Part of the surge math was before, since armor values were fixed, you'd be running through your head, okay, exactly how many do I need to apply to Pierce to get his armor to 0, and then how many do I need to apply to bonus damage? But now, since you don't know what he's going to roll in his armor dice, maybe it's not so obvious anymore as to how much you should put into piercing, right?
That's true. I don't know how many of the surges add piercing to it anyway.
Okay. That's interesting.
Piercing is a little bit different in this one anyway.
Doesn't it just reduce the number of shields, the shield roll the guy made?
Right, it ignores a certain amount of shields that they roll. Pierce was always confusing to explain in the original game for some reason.
Yeah.
It's just a lot easier here now.
Great. And sort of the last core changes here, I think, were we already talked about this. So there's some graphic design changes here, which we already talked about, the condition tokens and the hero card. Were there any other graphic design things that really caught your eye, Tom, as you played through it?
A minor one, but the map for the scenario that you go on is actually in the back of the scenario booklet.
Oh.
It's not its own little board. It's on the back because you don't actually need to move pieces around. You say, we're here. Where do you want to go now? And you pick where you're going to go. And then you look at the different places that you cross as you go there. And there might be some kind of encounters as you go there. But for the most part, it's kind of used as a visual reference than an actual map.
Well, that's a great segue, because the last area I want to talk about was the campaign system. So the map you're describing there in the back of the book is the campaign map, right? That in Road to Legend was a giant board. Oh, not giant, but a board you played on. And now it's just sort of a reference material on the book. And when you're crossing things over, so when you cross a certain number of items, you're going to draw some number of these encounter cards, and they're going to tell you what the heroes run into on the way. Right,
and I'll admit I wouldn't mind if there was maybe double or triple the amount of encounter cards, but there's enough for what you're doing, I think.
And are they always some kind of combat, or are they more could be anything?
It's that same old guy in a wagon shows up and says hi, and
right.
Or they could say peaceful night, nothing, stuff like that. Right, depending on what cards you draw. I like Fantasy Flight has done this before, where the card you draw, depending on the symbol, it's kind of like Arkham Horror does it to some degree. And I've always liked that idea. I turn a card over and it matches the symbol that's in play, then something happens, otherwise nothing does.
Right. Oh, very cool. Okay, so let's talk about the campaign system a bit, right? So the average quest, which is a single dungeon, what do they call it, right? Single set of tiles to go through. The play times, they're saying it's about an hour and a half. Did you find that to be the case, Tom? About an hour and a half for a session?
Well, what you have to realize is that every encounter that you go to has two halves to it.
Okay.
There's the initial half, and depending on who wins, the Overlord or the heroes, whoever meets their victory conditions, that will affect the second half.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say each of these halves, it's variable. I played some that were like 45 minutes and others that were an hour and a half.
Okay.
Putting them together, I think it would be fair to say both together is probably 2 hours.
Okay.
But if you wanted to, you could just pick one of the scenarios and
Just
play
run it, right.
But you'll play a certain amount of these scenarios, and you keep track of who has won each of the main scenarios. And then halfway through the campaign, you play an interlude scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And this scenario is akin to some of the scenarios from the original Descent. It's a biggie.
Oh, nice.
It's not as big as some of those were.
Right.
But it's at least 2 to 3 times as big as the scenarios you've been facing so far. Then you go to Act 2, and you'll go to different places on the board depending on who won the different encounters in Act 1.
Oh, neat. Okay.
And then eventually you get to the finale, which is another mega thing, and then you get to fight the big bad guy, who we shall keep a secret for those people.
Following along at home. Right. So let me see if I got math right here. So you're saying there's about, according to what I read in the book, there's 3 quests in Act 1 you're going to go through. Now, there's more than 3 quests to choose from, but you'll end up going through 3 of them, and which 3 you go through is going to depend on who wins and who loses as you go along, right? And then so you do three quests there. Then there'll be an interlude, another quest to fight. There may be some traveling combat, but then there's 3 more quests in Act 2, and then there's the finale. So that's 8 quests total. And if each quest was an hour and a half, which you said was probably the largest, so we're looking at like a 12-hour campaign if you did everything, not counting maybe some random monster encounters you had, right? Does that sound right?
Might wrap a little bit. But at the same time, I think the replayability is there.
Yeah.
Go through. You might not get some surprises that you might find along the way. But again, you could just play off. What I would do is I would play through the campaign, and then I would say, okay, we're going to do all the scenarios that we didn't go through. We'll do those as one-offs. I
like it because I don't think that's a negative at all. I think it's great that in a 12-hour campaign, so if I played this like, one night a week with a couple of friends for 2 hours or even 3 hours, that's a 3 or 4 week, maybe 4 to 6 week campaign. That's reasonable. That's not 10 months, right? And then, and I think you could play it again, right, with different heroes, with different, different archetypes, and all of a sudden, different classes, and all of a sudden it's a whole different experience, right? And the Overlord's going to pick different. And again, you mentioned also that, those monster slots are variable, so we can make an agreement with the heroes. Okay, next time you guys have to play different heroes, and I will have to pick all different monsters for my slots. I can't repeat anybody I used. So now and if I got the expansion, the upgrade kit, now I can go back and dig out all kinds of stuff and try all kinds of wackiness out. So I think there's a lot of replayability there. I think.
I think so too. I think though the people who are used to the 200 hours,
right?
Some of those people are going to be like, "What is this?
What happened?" Right.
And I think overall, that's that's my whole thing about the whole final thoughts on the game, is that your first reaction is like, what? They took this out. They took that out. They took out a ton of stuff. They took a machete to this game. And I think they did a good job. And I'm hoping if Kevin Wilson is listening to this episode, we are not bagging on Descent at all. It's one of my favorite games I've ever played. And because it's been sounding like we've been hating on this.
Right.
We're picking at the warts because we played it more than most games we own.
Right.
Yep.
So I think this is based on his good work, and it's now streamlined. And I think I'm going to make the call that within a year and a half, nobody except the most diehard fans will be playing Descent, the original version.
Nice. And for them, I have a full set that I'll be putting up on eBay soon.
Well, no, because you want to keep those monsters.
Right.
Oh, damn it. Cards and map tiles to be found on eBay.
Well, yeah, I'm right there with you, Tom. I own every original Descent 1 product. I have played more hours of Descent than probably any other game I own, and I love it. But I also really like the direction of the new system. I really like the idea, and I can't wait to really try those scenarios and see how balanced the overall campaign is. I mean, really, it came down to game balance, and the weight of so many options were making it hard for them to balance the game. And so hopefully this nice little reset to a cleaner rule set with still the core of what made Descent fun in there. The fact that it's versus, they still didn't go something crazy, make a co-op or anything. It's still the Overlord versus the players, and it's still, me trying to beat you and that kind of thing. I think that's fantastic. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think, if anything, I am more excited than I even was just reading the rulebook after hearing your experiences with the play sessions. I think it sounds exactly like what I was hoping for out of the game, and I really can't wait to get my hands on it.
And one more thing I have to say, as the Overlord, in this game, I felt like I could pull out all the stops and go full bore on the heroes, and it was a fair game.
Oh, that's a great point. So you felt like it was fun for you to play as hard as you could to beat them.
Yes, because of trying to complete those scenarios. And I wasn't just trying to kill them, I was trying to do something. So at first I was like, well, I'll do my typical Overlord. What are they doing to me? No. And I pull out my guns and we're fighting. And it just felt like a very fair battle.
Fantastic. So Craig, what did you think? What did you think of Descent?
I've always loved Descent, the first edition. And the only thing that I'm regretting is that I have every expansion, and all I'm missing are the lieutenants. And I actually have painted every model from the original and all the expansions, and now I'm going to have a whole bunch of more models to paint. So other than that, though, I'm super, super excited. And I'm super excited, actually, to get both the new game and the pack that will allow me to bring in all of those monsters into the next into this next exciting adventure. So I am extremely excited. I have seen nothing. I'm glad that it went from sort of an artificial tension level with the threat building to a more focused kind of narrative tension level, which I think is probably going to be more fun, and it's going to be replayability is actually going to be even better now, because that tension is going to be building for different reasons every time, rather than just here goes that pile of threat again.
Yeah.
So Craig has just built this up tremendously. So if you don't like it,
blame me.
You can blame him.
You can blame me.
Right. But I'm pumped about this. I'm very excited to play more of it and looking forward to seeing the game.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Tom. And that is Descent 2, the preview. Bye. And we'll be sure to cover the full review once we get our grubby little paws in this baby.
That's right.
You're listening to the D6 generation. Born to game.
Hey, is your favorite local store a select store with Game Salute? If they're not, you should have them sign up today at GameStoreLocator.com to get access to all kinds of select store exclusive games like Yomi, Alien Frontiers, Fealty. Mm-hmm. Not only that, but it actually will make it easier for people new to your area to find that store.
Exactly right. Game Salute does all kinds of great stuff in the background of the gaming industry as a whole. They are great for helping out Kickstarters all the time. They get out there, they put the springboard seal approval on games there. They make sure that game's been vetted. So if you see that seal on a Kickstarter program, you know that professionals like Dan Yarrington and other folks with Game Salute have made sure that game is a quality product and the right kind of research, and is going to be a great experience for you if you decide to back that program. So check out GameSalute.com.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, total fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat now stares a vampire. Hello, everyone. This is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicole Wakeland and check out my blog, TotalFangirl.com. This week, shout out Team Cranky at extra-life.org. Join Team Cranky. You've got 16 people on his team, over $1,000 already raised for Children's Miracle Network hospitals. This week, I'm going to be talking about a Kickstarter that is probably in the middle as I'm recording this. It's from Marion Call. I had her on the show a while back. I interviewed her when she came to do a concert up in New Hampshire. She is a nerd musician extraordinaire. I know a lot of you found her through the show, and she's gotten a bit bigger since then. She's played a couple of different Woodstocks. She goes to San Diego Comic-Con. She's played at Think Geek's headquarters, and she's absolutely hilarious. She truly is a nerd. I got to see her just a little bit and hang out with her one evening at San Diego Comic-Con last year, and she is just as nerdy as she looks in her little videos and in her songs. she's toured the entire U.S. She did a 50 states tour where she did a concert, or more than one in some cases, in every single state in the U.S. But one thing she has never done before is toured outside of the U.S., and that's what her Kickstarter is. She's got a cute name for it. It's called Marry and Call European Adventure Quest, because it can't just be a Kickstarter. We're nerds, we're geeks. It's an adventure quest. And she really did make it like a game. When you make donations, it basically unlocks a new country in Europe, depending on where you spend little imaginary coins that you win, little virtual loot, if you will. So far, by the donations that she's had, her goal was just, I think, $11,000, and she's got $32,000. So she has more than made her goal, which means she's going. But the question is, where is she going to go so that all of you in Europe can finally see her? So far, she has unlocked, or you guys have unlocked, England, Wales, Germany, Austria, Belgium, Holland, and Luxembourg. There's still 15 days to go as I'm recording this. So donations you make now, depending on how much you donate, you get a virtual coin that you can cast for your vote in whichever country you want her to come to. And then you can go a little further at certain points and you can cast where in that country you would like her to come to. I think the lowest backing amount is, $5. If you donate $15, you get 3 coins to vote with however you choose to get her to come to wherever you are in Europe, which is pretty cool. And you can also donate amounts where you'll get, and I think it starts at 15 again, you can get her Marry and Call Live in Europe album. So she's going to be recording an album as she goes to whatever countries and cities she finally ends up going to. And you'll get that as a part of the Kickstarter. If you haven't seen Marry and Call play, she's really fun. She is just a really genuine, honest person. She's a riot to watch. She's a very talented musician and always has wonderful people playing with her. And I think if you're in Europe and you want a chance to see her, you should be heading over to her Kickstarter. If you just look on Kickstarter for Marian, MARIAN Call, you will find her. Call is just CALL. And you can see how everything is going and how much she's raised and where she's going, because she does update as she gets more money and more places unlocked. But one of the funniest parts of this entire thing is if you go to MarryandCallAdventureQuest.com, she has a map and a graph of where people are donating and where they want her to go to around Europe. And it's hilarious because it's this ridiculously old school map. It even says Ye Old Kickstarter. It has Act 1 and Act 2 and Act 3. And there's a little image of Marian done up in some cosplay with a sword and a cape. She has all the different countries and they're highlighted yellow, and they have little meeples placed wherever a concert's been unlocked, or little locks if your country hasn't been unlocked yet. And there's also a tally at the bottom so you can see where she's getting a lot of support. Like Portugal only has 4, but Italy has 12 and Scotland has 19. So you can see how many people are looking to get her to come to each country. It's a lot of fun. Check out her music. You can hear a lot of her music on her website, but the Marry and Call Kickstarter, all you people in Europe, that's where you ought to be heading. Check it out.
And, if you want to see something professional and really awesome looking on a bookstore near you, head over to the magazine section and check out War Games, Soldiers, and Strategy magazine. It's a fantastic miniatures magazine, and it looks right at home next to all the big boys of magazine fare. It's got great pictures, great articles.
It is a big boy.
In fact, speaking of articles, I read in the latest issue 61, there was a great article by none other than Rick Priestley talking about how historical gamers should be open and more accepting of non-historical gamers. That there used to be more open, and they became this rift where historical gamers didn't really want to, be thought of as people playing with toys. And he's saying, really, it's all part of the fun. We're all out there having fun and making stories, whether it's historicals or whether it is miniature, sci-fi or fantasy or whatever. It's all there to have fun and get creative and have a good time. So it's really great that they're working hard to help, bridge the gap. It's a great place to get into historical games if you've never tried it before. And really, if you're a modeler of any stripe, you will really appreciate the awesome-looking photography, the great way they get the nice macro pictures of these models. You can see every detail, how these people paint these models. It's really fantastic.
And the theme, the great way that they have a theme that runs through each magazine that doesn't overwhelm you. It's not the entire magazine, but each magazine has modeling articles and missions and various different reviews that sort of tailor to one specific theme. And of course, the theme for issue 61 is what is it again? It is
it's
colonial wars.
War in the colonies, yes.
The colonial times.
This issue, 1688, William III and the Glorious Revolution.
There you go.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And you know what's fantastic about this, too? If you head on over to WSSmagazine.com today, right now, operators are standing by, and you order anything from there, make sure you put in the code D6G for savings, and you'll save, what is it, Craig?
15% off any combination of orders from the web shop by using the coupon code D6G at WSSmagazine.com.
I'm Dan, your friendly professional game guide. Welcome back to When You Wish Upon a Game, where we discuss ways we can make the game industry better. This question comes from listener Andrew. Why do game companies so frequently produce games with terrible box inserts? Far too frequently do we either get a cavernous space in which we're supposed to just toss all the components, or an intricately molded insert that gives no indication of where all the bits go no matter how long you puzzle about with it. What prevents more games from having helpful inserts with clear storage instructions such as Lords of Waterdeep or Small World? Thanks for the question, Andrew. This is something that comes up quite often, and there are lots of reasons for this. The biggest issue is that it takes a lot of time, energy, and expertise to craft a great box insert. Even leaving aside the CAD skills needed to make a custom molded insert with spots for everything, there's a ton of time spent measuring how and where to fit components, both when they're in the punch boards and when they're punched out of the punch boards, and generally creating the best organizational strategy overall. Do you want to accommodate expansions? Is the insert and the storage obvious, or do you need something to explain it? Do you want to accommodate cards and sleeves? If you do, will the cards not fit well for players not using sleeves? The list goes on. Then, once you've designed your box insert, you have to test it and develop it, just like you would the game. And then when you find out you made a bunch of mistakes, you have to tweak it to fix it and re-engineer it to make it really work. That's quite simply why those games with great inserts are so rare. In fact, this issue is so pervasive that people make an entire sub-hobby out of organizing their games, using Plano cases, custom foam inserts, and a variety of baggies, boxes, and other containers. Please, please don't use rubber bands. As a gamer, I have more games to play and less time to play them. I want the transition from one game to another to be as seamless as possible. I enjoy things being well organized as well, just from an aesthetic standpoint. That's what I see when I wish upon a game. How about you? Let's take this problem and turn it into a productive discussion. What is your ideal game storage solution? What is the best box insert? What issues do you have with carrying and storing your games? How much money and time do you spend reorganizing and fixing the box content rather than just enjoying the game? Email me at wish@gamesalute.com. Thanks for listening and have fun playing.
Welcome back, and now we're ready to talk about the second piece of unreleased hotness we talked about this show, which of course is Leviathans.
Yes.
Now
this one we got to play.
I know, before Tom, although I think Tom has a copy. He just
No, actually I had the opportunity, but I passed it on to my guy who I think would actually appreciate it more than I
there
would.
You go.
So
there you go.
The Dice Hour review is forthcoming.
Okay, good. So Catalyst was kind enough to send us this early copy of Leviathans. Now according to Randall, this is coming out. Their target is August, and they fully expect to have them at Gen Con, so it's only a month or so away from everybody now. And, of course, they're giving one away as the contest. It's very copy, so we're excited about that, too. And this, of course, is obviously coming out this year, Catalyst Game Labs, coming out in August. It's a 2-player flying ship naval combat game.
Yeah.
So, really, it's flying ships, and that's cool, and it's very steampunk, which is cool. But really, at its heart, it's a detailed naval combat game. And we'll get into more about how detailed it is in a bit. And it's definitely one of these sort of I think it's a trend. Tom, correct me if I'm wrong. You think this is a trend or not? But it's sort of a hybrid game now, where this seems like miniature games and board games are starting to collide more. Where there's a lot more miniatures in your board game.
Yeah, in the good old days, we used to be separate, but now there's all this interbreed mixing. What is this?
We had cardboard and chits, and we liked it.
And we liked it. We loved it.
So, and this is another one of those. Now, this interesting thing about Leviathans, it does come in the giant, almost dead, pardon the pun, coffin box format. So
it's too many puns there, sir.
But it is $100 MSRP. But you got a lot in there. We'll go through the contents exactly. And the big thing, of course, is you're going to get quite a few of these pre-painted plastic ships on flying stands that look pretty good. We'll talk about those in detail in a bit. So that's where the value is. And now, but to make this, you got to get to the field. There's a lot of background material and fluff in this box. There's a couple of books about it, lots of pictures, lots of imagery. So Tom now is going to give us a dramatic reading of the intro to the game. Tom?
In 1878, the Polish genius, and as a Polish person, that seems odd, Rynchowski isolated an electrical fluid with remarkable lifting capabilities, a single pivotal event that would change the world. The smartest military minds of the coming generation, Zeppelin, Jellicoe, known from Cats, Fisher, and others, diverted their attention to the glorious new technology revolution, and seagoing battleships were abandoned around the world. In their place, armored giants took to the skies. In 1906, Great Britain launched the HMS Leviathan, the first of the super airships, sparking an arms race around the world. By 1910, the most powerful nations, not including the United States, boasted large, high fleets. And the start of small skirmishes left the world uneasy. Welcome to Leviathan.
Ooh, nice. Nice echo effect. That was very good. Well, thank you, Tom. That was excellent. So that is the background to Leviathans. Craig, have you had a chance to kind of comb through the background books that came in the box?
I have. Not only have I combed through them, I have read both the two, they call them novelettes, but they're really only 24 pages each. So they're nice little short stories, but in a nice little glossy booklet. And they've done this cool thing where I feel like I'm back in grade school, because you read through halfway and that's the end of the first book. So you flip it.
Right.
And then it's the second book. And it's kind of cool. One is I think it's French versus the English. And then the other one is I think it's like Germans or Russians versus I can't remember, but it was cool. The short stories are cool. And then the Gazetteer for New Airmen, which is actually extremely thick, doesn't have a page count, so it's kind of 90, more than 90 pages, and it has a breakdown of the major countries, which unfortunately in the table of contents are not listed by the country. They're listed by like a little write-up. So for instance, king and country, let's play a game. Okay, a gamette. Ready? Here, we're gonna play a gamette. Well, I'm gonna give you the title. One of you two come up with the country that's being outlined.
Right.
King and country.
UK.
Yeah, absolutely. Esprit de corps.
France, maybe?
French.
Okay,
Nice. Okay. The Sons of Tsushima.
Japan.
Nice. Kriegspiel in the Sky.
Germany.
Good. Ready? Skobalev's Legacy.
Now
they get
Cambodia.
Nice.
No. I believe that one is the Russians.
All right. That's cool.
The white Russians.
So would you say they have a lot of good background material in here?
There's to be totally honest, if I'm going to be kind of brutal, this has got too much.
Okay.
This is going to be cool because it's kind of got a little bit of everything. It's got the Italians. Yeah. It's got the Americans.
Oh,
yay! It's got the Canadian. No, I don't know.
But in the box, all that comes for ships are French
right.
and
yeah. The problem
UK.
I see is that, and then it has minor air powers, so it's got a bunch of little minor countries. My problem is that you've got probably 10 or more factions in this 90-page book. And for the foreseeable future, you only have the French and the English.
Right. But I think they're trying to show you that they've got a fleshed out universe here, right?
Yes, they certainly do have a fleshed out universe. In fact, I know because I accidentally stumbled upon his blog. They actually hired a World War I historian to help them write the fluff and keep it in line with real life history.
And you might ask yourself,
which is pretty neat.
Guys, why are you spending so much time describing the background material in this game? Well, because pretty much half of your purchase is background material.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a giant stack.
In this box, there's a number of great full color ship cards. There's 12 of them that are where you track your damage and information. But there's another 12 exact same awesome looking full color cards that are just drawings of the ships and background material for each ship.
Yeah.
And then, as Craig mentioned, the Gazetteer. Is that how you pronounce
the Gazetteer.
That fluff book, that is the size of the main rule book.
Yeah,
you know,
90 pages.
So seriously, they're into the background material here. They're really into getting into. If that's what you want, if you want a complete immersion in the game with a nice universe and not just some tacked on, hey, there happens to be flying ships here, this is the game for you. If you don't want to have a large chunk of your budget going to background material, then maybe you want to rethink it. But this game's definitely got both those sides of the coin there. So if you really want a full meaty universe, and remember, this is the company that brought you BattleTech. I'm going to say that more than once.
Right.
Which is what they're known for.
Right.
Right, because the BattleTech 25th anniversary box, half of that was background and fluff.
Exactly.
But I actually like that because it was neat. I have a poster now to put up on my wall, and if you like the background, for example, the BattleTech universe, I love the background.
Mm-hmm.
So all that I enjoyed.
Yeah, and I think they're going for the same thing here. And let's talk about what's in the box because, as you mentioned, a poster, Tom. There's a poster in this one too. A great, nice poster with a lot of the ships on it. It's really nice. There's also the 2 rule books. One sort of a quick start rule book, is same as BattleTech, and then there's the nice thicker full core rule book there. There's 8 of these ships we mentioned. There's 2 of the giant full Leviathan class ships.
Battleships.
Battleships. There's a couple medium class ships.
Cruisers.
And then there's 4 of the smaller ships.
Destroyers.
Well, wait a minute here, though. I'm confused about this. I paid $100 for 8 ships.
Yes, you did. But
yes, you did.
That doesn't sound like mega battles.
Well, they are very large ships. I mean, they're pretty big pieces of plastic. So the battleships are pretty long. 4 inches, 5 inches, Craig? On the big
I would say 4 or 5 inches for the battleship. They're not huge, but they're nice, clean plastic sculpts. They're pre-painted. Pre-painted doesn't really. I think there's a lot of detail on them that are going to come out with a little extra work. They're more pre-painted than dust miniatures.
Right.
They've got maybe 2 colors. They 2 or 3 colors. I think there are 2 colors.
I think there's 3 colors because there's like a
hull color
and a black,
and then there's like a bronze, and then they have black.
Yeah, the stacks.
Yeah. So that's right. Yeah. So there's 3 colors, which is a really nice beginning base coat. They look nice right off the bat, but if you want to put a little extra time and effort into them, I think they'll really pop. So they're really nice models, but there are only 10 of them.
Now there's also a lot of plastic in here too because there's also these flying stands. So each ship has a flying stand that is the number of hexes it consumes on the board, so it kind of sits in the right spot. But then also what's sort of interesting and surprises when we first set them up is there's a flight stand peg that goes on the hex base, and the ship flies on that. But there's actually enough stands in there to model the ships at 3 different heights each, and they pop apart. So you can actually model the ships at low, medium, and high flying altitudes. Yeah. It's a lot of plastic, but in the basic rules in the game, there's no rules or mention as to why you'd model them at different heights. It seems like a fully 2D game, even though they're flying, which most of these sort of flying games nowadays are kind of like that. Well, it turns out that they have a PDF on their website that explains that they're coming out with, in the Commander's box, which is a first expansion coming out not too far away, that is going to have the rules for altitude.
Do we know when this game comes out?
August.
Did you mention?
Yes.
August. Okay.
August.
So probably Gen Con.
So yes.
Yeah.
But I don't think the command. And also Randall mentioned that originally the Commander's book was going to be in the original box, and somehow for production costs, it didn't make it in there. So
gotcha. So is it just a book? The next expansion?
Well, I don't know exactly what's going to be in there. I know they're going to have new tokens because they're going to introduce cloud rules and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know.
Is this a pre-existing universe?
Not as far as I know.
No, I think
it's brand
this
new.
is all brand new stuff.
Yeah, which is why there's so much, I think, of this background material in here. So you get that. You get the ship cards. You get 24 ship cards, 12 of them for the rules and then 12 more for fluff. And they're really nice production quality, nice heavy stock, full gloss, full color.
Glossy.
So there's more of your money going into that. You got the Gazetteer. You got 2 fiction novellas, which is really one book that's double-sided, as Craig mentioned.
Yeah.
You get 2 very nice board game quality map boards. These aren't the old school BattleTech like flip-out boards. These are like the new anniversary edition.
Very thick.
Yeah.
I think they were
double-sided.
The linen too,
Yes.
weren't they? I
Yeah.
think they are.
They're like the linen. They're full color. They have nice ground. Of course, all that matters is the hexes, but they have the nice background. Like you're flying high above the ground.
There's like artwork. And,
They're double-sided for different artwork, just for the effects. They look really nice. There's also 10 D12 dice, and they're custom dice, so they look like D12s. They have numbers on the sides of them. But there's different colors. And the different colors indicate different probabilities because what they've done is they've changed the numbers on the dice. So certain dice don't go up to 12. Some of them do go up to 12. And so based on which color dice you use, you're going to get different number results. And
I like that. That's a good.
Yeah, well, I think you're like the
mechanic.
dice mechanics here, Tom. And then they add 2d6 as well. We'll get to that later. You get 2 reference cards, which are also very nice, double-sided, easy to reference. You get that poster I mentioned earlier. You get a sheet of with the decals to increase your ship's look. So you get to put these little decals, and you can add the flags to the ships and everything, make them look pretty cool. And then you get a good amount of cardboard tokens. You get a bunch of torpedo tokens that are going to be your launch and target square markers. And you also get a bunch of offensive and defensive screening markers. And then you get something that's pretty unique in a board game. You get a long piece of string, which we'll get to about that in a bit, helping you with line of sight. The only thing missing in this box, when you open it up, you have absolutely everything you need to play except for a dry erase marker.
Yeah.
So make sure you have a dry erase marker near you when you're going to bust the game out for the first time. So there's a lot in there, a lot of books, a lot of materials, but it is $100. So I don't know, Craig, what did you think about the value after you looked inside of it?
Well, $100 still seems to me to be a little steep. There's no denying the quality of every component that's in there. It looks like, you've got all the cool car. They've gone all out. I would have liked to see a little more depth, maybe a few more ships, maybe the clouds. I don't know. I'm not sure how you would pop that up there so that $100 seemed to make sense. But I guess, well, no, because I don't know. My impulse looking at everything was it just seems like just a little bit more here, or a little like the board seemed small and cramped, but then when we played, it seemed like there was plenty of space on the board.
Yeah.
So I think probably a rational mind would look at that, and I think you're getting enough for your $100. You know what I'm saying? I don't think you're going to be like, holy crap, all this and only for $100. But right. I think once you think about it, you look at all the different stuff, and you look at all the fluff, and you look at all the little fiddly bits that you get with it. I think $100 probably is close enough to making sense.
I don't think that if Fantasy Flight had produced it, you'd be getting much more.
That's
they would be selling it for $100.
Yeah,
they certainly would. But it would be in a smaller box now. We know
half the size, right?
Right.
Yeah. It's the new coffin style box.
That's right. Midget coffins.
If there was some miracle way they could have sold it for $80, I think it would be a no-brainer, awesome deal. At $100, it feels like it's
true.
It feels like it's fair, but you're kind of questioning it, right? It's right. It's not the line, but I think
I would say at $80, it's a no-brainer, and at $100, you're probably going to have to spend 5 or 10 minutes in the game store looking at it on the shelf,
right.
And then you'll make it without a lot of buyer's remorse.
Yeah, I don't think you'll regret it assuming you like the rules, which we're going to go through right now.
Yeah.
So first, as we're wont to do, we like to talk about what it takes to set up a game. Now, this is one of those games that actually doesn't take long. But before we get into this, I want to make one little caveat. Now, we mentioned last year when we saw this game at Gen Con that both Craig and I were extremely disappointed in it. We had gone to Gen Con, thrilled to try Leviathans. It was one of our top
excited.
Top
one
10
of the
games
few things
to see.
we signed up for ahead of time.
Yes, we really wanted to see it. Got to the demo, hated it.
Underwhelmed.
We're totally done with it. Check, please. We were done. Walked away. Didn't care. And Calla said, hey, well, you didn't try the full rules. It's much better with the full rules. And they sent us a demo copy, right?
Yeah.
So today, we're going to talk about the full rules of the game because, to be frank, I think the light rules, they're there, but I don't think the game plays well with the light rules. I think it's too simple.
I don't think they do the game justice at all.
Now, it may be nice if you're playing with more casual gamers, or maybe to bring it down for your kids. That'd be great. But I really think if you're a veteran gamer or you're bringing this to war gamers, just start with the full rules. They're not that complicated, and it really brings the game to the way it was meant to be played, I think.
Where would you compare the light rules to like a real light game like Battleship Galaxies that came out last year?
I would say the light rules are at the Battleship Galaxies level.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think the heavy rules are – it's actually very similar to Battletech. If you play the Battletech introductory rules, there's no heat, there's no torso twisting. It's kind of like almost like what's the point, really, right? It's very, very light. You learn how to color the circles in, right? And the basic mechanics of the game are there, and you are learning the mechanics. but there's not enough to make it strategic. But then all of a sudden you kick in heat, you kick in torso twist, you kick in running and stuff, and all of a sudden Battletech is really interesting. It's exactly the same as that. So very close. But yeah, it's a lot meatier when you get all this stuff in there. So to set this game up, it's really simple. You're going to pick one of the 3 scenarios. There's only 3, so it's not that hard. I would recommend starting with a third scenario, as Craig and I did, because it's only 2-on-2 ships. You flop out the game boards, which is simple. Pick a side, set them up according to the scenario, which is not putting any terrain on them. It's just flipping them over to make the pictures match, basically. The scenario tells you which ships to have in the battle, so it's not that complicated. One thing to watch, though, is make sure you pay attention to the ship's names, because there are more ship cards than there are ships in the game, so they're different variants for the same model. So you want to make sure you get the right variant for the scenario. So you get your quick reference cards out in front of you, and you're ready to play. That's pretty much it. There's not a lot of setup time here. Now, before we get to the rules, we should take a second and describe these ship cards, because they do look a little funky, right, Craig?
Yeah, they do.
So what do the cards look like?
Well, they're kind of cool looking. They've got that top-down view, right? Those are the cards you're looking at?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's kind of almost like a ship recognition card. And then graphically, the design is cool, because basically what you're going to be tracking is each little region of the ship is broken down into port, starboard, fore and aft, and then the big ships actually break it down into fore, port and starboard, and aft, port and starboard. So it's 6 sections.
Yeah, they call those
each
locations.
of those sections, what's that?
They call those locations.
Locations.
Yep.
Okay, and each of those locations is then broken down into 6. What are those called?
Slots.
Okay, that makes sense. And each slot is giving the ship or representing some power that the ship has. So it's either going to represent 1 point of movement for the ship, or 1 point of armor, the extra armor that the ship has. So that's all very, very cool. Or the weapons that the ship has, or crew stations. So it's very cool that all of the abilities of the ship or many of the abilities of the ship are tracked somewhere on the ship document itself, so that as you're taking damage, the ability of your ship to perform in battle is degrading.
Yeah, I think it's probably the coolest part. And really, that's the meat of the game right there, is the ship card. And the other thing you're going to watch for is there's a couple of the key points on there, in addition to these locations and their slots and what's in the slots and the armor value of each slot. You've also got sort of a large number in the lower left. That's your movement points the ship has, basically how far it moves a turn. In the lower right, there's a big number. That's the number. It's called the minimum move before turns. It's basically how many hexes you must move in a straight line before you may turn. Sort of, emulating inertia and how it's hard to turn a big ship. And then finally, there's a big number in the upper left that's called the structure points. And we'll get more into structure points later, but it's sort of like how hard it is to make the final killing blow on your ship.
Right.
So really, you're going to look at the ship. The ship card has everything you need to know about it, because not only does it have all the damage locations, but it also has all the powers of your ship. It has all the weapons. Each of those slots doubles as something that can get hurt, but also a weapon you can use. So really, everything you need to know is right there on that card.
Do these ships have shields?
There are no shields like in Star Trek. There are just armor locations, although they could add them, I think, in the future. I'm sure they could do all kinds of craziness, but at this point in the game, there's no shields.
Right.
Well, there are, as Craig mentioned, there are slots that are bonus armor slots. So
we're kind of exactly like that.
Yeah, so there's a slot that says armor +1, and while that slot is not destroyed, all slots on that location side have +1 to their to hit value. Yeah. So basically, there are locations that, as long as they don't get destroyed, it makes all the slots in that location harder to hurt. So it's kind of like a shield; it's like extra armor. All right, so that's the card. So now, how do we play this game? Well, I like to say and I know, Tom, you subscribe to the school of thought as well. When you're starting to teach a game, the first thing to do is to make sure everyone knows what they're trying to achieve. So in this game, generally the point is to kill the other guy, but actually read the scenario, because this is one of those war games where each scenario drives the objective, right? So one of them might be kill a specific ship or get across the board with a particular thing or whatever. But the basic scenarios are basically kill more of them than they kill of you. So check those objectives out. And then how it works is basically the turn's broken down into a few rounds here. The first is the initiative step, and all you're going to do is both sides are going to roll 2D red. Now, in the rule book, everything is defined, instead of, us old gamers are used to 2D6 or 2D12. Well, all the dice in this game, except for the couple D6s, are D12s. So they can't say D12 all the time, because they're all different. So they say it in colors. So they'll say 2D red or 2D yellow or whatever to indicate which color of the dice you should roll. And again,
that's what the game should have more to make it worth more.
Oh, more dice.
Should have more dice.
Yes, and do yourself a favor. You will need lots of dice. They do sell them separately. Just if you know you're going to want Leviathans, order a separate pack of dice
right off
set.
the bat.
Just do it.
You are. It's going to get annoying. You're going to need so many.
They need more dice in the set. So you roll 2 red initiative dice, or 2 of the red dice for initiative. Highest total is first player. Easy enough.
Yeah.
Next is the torpedo phase. Now, here's my tip. I said to play the game for the first time with all the rules, and you should. But in round 1, just skip the torpedo phase. Just to get a feel for the game, come back and do the torpedo phase in turn 2. Okay? It won't hurt your game any, and you'll get a feel for it, but it'll give you the first round without torpedoes. So I'm going to follow that rule right now explaining the game. There is a torpedo phase. We're going to come back and explain torpedoes after we explain the rest of the rules. All right? So there's a torpedo phase, launch phase. Then we go on to movement. Now, movement in this game is nice and simple because what's nice about it is it's got hexes on the board, so that removes all the complicated miniature gaming movement issues you normally have. The loser of initiative is going to move first. And it is alternating you go, I go, except that you do this by class of ship. So, for example, if Craig wins initiative and I lose initiative, as the initiative loser, I have to move my biggest class of ships first. So all my class 4 ships, and in the core box set, you only have 1 for each side. So I would move my large battleship first. And then Craig would move... Oh, go ahead, Craig.
Well, this can get confusing to me. And basically what happens is if I win initiative, Russ is going to have to go first if he has one of the biggest ships on the board. So let's say we each have 2 larges, we each have 2 mediums, we each have 2 smalls. Russ is going to move his large, then I'm going to move my large. Then Russ is going to move both of his mediums, and I'm going to move both of my mediums, and so on.
Right.
But if, for instance, in one of the games that Russ and I played, Russ didn't have any... He actually was supposed to have a medium and a small, and he had 2 smalls. And I had a large and a small. So even when I won initiative, my large, which I like this aspect of the game a lot, my large still had to go first. So it's going by and I think this is what you said, Russ, but it sounds confusing, so I just thought I'd jump in. All right. Basically, the size categories are all going to go before you get to the next size category. Which I think is cool because even though you win initiative, if your force is a lot slower, it's not going to win you any great advantage, which I thought was cool.
Right. That making sense, Tom?
Yeah, so far.
Okay.
So far.
All right. Now, when you move these guys, when you're moving your ships, you turn them, and turning is very simple. You remember there's that number on the card that says minimum distance before you turn. And where you pivot the ship is going to depend on its base and its class, and that's all indicated on the quick reference card. They have a nice little diagram there. So you just move your ship ahead a couple, turn it, 1 hex, and move it some more. That's really simple. But there are some sort of advanced turning tricks. One of them is steering gear. So if you have a slot on your ship that says steering gear, and some of the ships do, some of them don't, so some ships are more nimble than others, and you'll see them right there on your ship on the port and starboard side on the ship card there, a place that can be destroyed. It says steering gear. If you have steering gear, you can use it then to reduce your minimum movement speed before you turn. So you can actually make your ship turn tighter than it should be able to for its class size, which lets them, by putting extra steering gear on each side of the ship, become more maneuverable. What's really cool about this mechanic is, as your steering gear gets damaged on one side, turning in that direction becomes harder and harder for that ship. And I actually had a case where I was fighting Craig, and all of a sudden, he blew up my steering gear on my starboard side, and I had to turn to port. And I really wanted to turn to starboard to get my guns in a better position, so it actually tactically impeded me, which is awesome. So you really get that feel of systems failing on your ships that actually work in game mechanics. It's really very nice. Without having to add any, when this system is hit, it reduces this. It's just, I no longer have any steering gear. I can't use that special rule anymore. It's kind of nice. Yeah. Now, one other thing about movement we should mention, there's a tactical option here that Craig and I started dabbling with, but I think you need to play the game quite a bit to really get to this level. But it's called screening. And there's 2 types of screening in the game. There's offensive screening and defensive screening. Now, we're in a 3D flying game here, right? And most of the 3D flying games, they don't really pay much attention to the fact that you're flying, except to say, nobody blocks line of sight. You can shoot through all the other ships as much as you'd like, right?
Yeah.
And that's true in this game, too, except if you choose to do screening, basically what you say is, I'm going to attempt to block line of sight to one of my ships with my own ships by basically matching his height. So if I want to do defensive screening, that means I'm going to use one of my own ships to block shots against another ship. So let's say I've got a mission I'm trying to escort a ship, or I've got a badly damaged ship I'm trying to protect. I can say he's going to screen that other ship. I move him adjacent to him. I spend 3 extra movement points, and I put a token on the board that says he is now defensively screening that ship. So any attacks that would pass through the screening ship to hit another one now cannot. Their line of sight is blocked. There's another neat trick called offensive screening, which is sort of the reverse of that. So instead of saying I'm going to defend my own ship, you can instead say, I'm going to match the altitude of one of Tom's ships. So now when any time that ship Tom has tries to shoot through the ship that I'm screening with, it'll always get blocked by that guy. So basically,
That's okay,
kind of gets.
we just shoot through you anyway.
Yeah, right. So basically, try to block that. So it's really an interesting way to kind of screen. So it adds some more levels of why you'd want to maneuver. So it gives you that ability to kind of gives you that illusion of altitude a little bit there. I really like that rule, and I did try to use it a couple times, and I felt like I could really get the hang of it once I got a little more practice in the game. So that's movement. It's really very simple. You move a few squares ahead, you rotate, you're pretty much done. Use steering gear to increase your turn to decrease your turn radius, and screen if you want to, but you probably won't do much screening until your second or third game. After movement is done, then you resolve torpedo attacks. More about those later. We're skipping torpedoes for the moment, but so torpedoes going to happen before you move and then after you move, but before you attack.
Right.
Then there's combat. We'll get to combat in a minute, and then there's the end phase. Okay, and in the end phase, just a couple cleanup things like most of these games have. You're going to cross off your damage, and you're going to make some crew repair rolls, and I'll get to those in a little later in the review here. But that's the core of the game. Roll initiative. You do a torpedo launch step. You do your movement. You resolve any torpedo strikes. You fire your guns, and you're done. Repeat and rinse until you end your game.
Yeah.
But of course, the coolest part of the game is shooting guns at people. So let's get into that part.
All right, about time.
There we go. Get some death and destruction in here.
Now, when the combat phase comes, there's probably a technical order you're supposed to resolve these things in. But Craig and I found it doesn't really matter because all combat's considered simultaneous, and none of the combat effects take effect until that end cleanup phase. So it doesn't really matter who shoots first. And what I like about how the cards work and the fact that you use a grease pencil or a dry erase marker is that it's very easy to remember what was damaged this turn and what was damaged in prior turns. So basically, remember Craig mentioned earlier these slots on your ship, and every slot has got some slots of weapons in them, and it's very easy to tell which slots have weapons in them because they have these little colored circles in them which match the colors of the dice. So you might see a slot that says 30 millimeter cannon, and it'll have a 4/8, and then below it'll have a green/yellow. What that means is the 4/8 is the range. So if you're within 4 hexes or less of your target, you get to use the first color dice. But if you're in longer than 4 but less than 8, you get to use the second color dice. And if you're beyond 8 hexes, you can't use any dice because you're out of range. So basically, the color of the dice right there are going to help you get your bonuses for range and everything. You don't have to think about it. You're just going to look and go, oh, he's within 4. I get to use this color die as opposed to that color die. So there's no looking at tables for any kind of modifiers for range or any of that business. He's in range. Is he in short or long? I use that color die.
That's a good mechanic, and I think they should use that in more games.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So you're going to say, so you look at your weapon slot. Now here's the very basic thing. You say, okay, I'm going to attack with this slot against Tom's ship. So I look at where on my ship that slot is. It's in the bow location. So being in the bow location defines its arc. Guess what? Bow weapons shoot forward. If it's on the broadside, if it's on the starboard side, it shoots to the starboard. They have very clear defined arcs in the rulebook, so you can see where the weapons are going to shoot. So if your target is in your front arc, you're going to check with a string, if you have to see if you're going to be able to see him. When it wouldn't normally be a problem unless you have someone screening you or something, doing one of those offensive defensive screenings. And then also you're going to look and see where on the target ship you're hitting him. So it's going to matter where I'm striking Tom's ship. If I'm striking him, if I'm coming at him from his rear arc, I'm going to hit him in the stern. I was going to hit him in the side. So that matters. So you're going to figure out what you're shooting, who, and where you're hitting the target. Okay? And now you're going to build your dice pool. So your dice pool is going to consist of a bunch of dice. First of all, you're going to get the weapon die, which is going to be the die that matches the color of the weapon you're shooting based on the range to your target. Then you get a crew bonus die. So how this works is, on most locations of ships, there's a slot that says crew, and next to the word crew, there's a colored die. And that is the bonus die you get to add to any weapon from that location that fires. So remember, a location is made up of 6 slots. You might have a 30 millimeter gun and a 50 millimeter gun and then a crew slot. So that means either time the 30 millimeter or the 50 millimeter gun fires, it also gets that bonus crew die because you've got extra crew there making sure that everything's loaded properly and everything's being sighted and all that good stuff. So you'll get a weapon die. You might get a crew die. Now, you won't get a crew die if there's no crew slot or the crew slot's been destroyed in a prior turn. So there's more of that battle degradation going on there, right? You're losing crew, all of a sudden things getting bad. Now, there's one other die that gets added into this mess, and that is the target ship location die. So remember I mentioned you're going to look at where on Tom's ship I'm striking. And so let's say I'm hitting Tom in the port side. So we look at Tom's port location.
I wish you would attack Craig once in a while.
I'll get to Craig in a minute.
Hey, I get attacked all the time.
So I'm coming into your port. I'm firing my gun at your port side, Tom.
I'm actually finding it refreshing that I'm not getting attacked.
And there's these two little sort of like streaky lines. One's green and one's red. The green line will lead to a colored dot that is to be used if your ship moved this turn. So, Tom, if your ship moved and I'm shooting in the port, I might see a green line and it'll have a yellow dot. Nope. I get to add a yellow dot in my pool because your ship moved, but I'm shooting it in the broadside. If your ship was stationary, I would look at the red line and it might say you get to add a red die in the pool. So I'm getting a better dice if you remain still. Again, no modifier, no tables, nothing. I just know if Tom moved, I look at the location I'm shooting at and figure out if it's green. If Tom didn't move, I look at the location he was at the stop location and grab that die instead. So I've got really basically 3 main dice in my pool. I've got my main weapon die, I got my crew die if I've got one, and then I've got the target ship location die based on which side of the ship I'm shooting. Now this is very interesting because once you figure the game out, you'll start realizing it's easier to hit the ship in its broadside than it is from the bow or the stern. Why? Because the bonus die that gets added is better. So all that coolness of there really should be modifiers when you shoot from the side as opposed to shooting from the stern, it's all baked into the game. It's really great. Just grab the colored die and match it. The final die in the pool is just a 1d6, okay, and that's called the location die, and that's going to be used to figure out which of those slots in Tom's port side I'm about to blast with my guns, right? So here's what we do. We roll all that big pool of dice, probably 3 or 4 d12s and a d6, and we add up all the d12s. And then we look at the d6 and see which slot it is. So we're going to look at Tom's port side of his card. He's got 6 slots there, numbered 1 through 6. Let's say I roll a 5. We look in Tom's 5th slot, and next to that 6, there's going to be a larger gray number, which is the sort of the armor value or the value that's needed to penetrate the ship. If the sum of my d12s equal or exceeds that slot's defense number, the slot is destroyed, and Tom would circle that slot in his ship, reminding him that it's not dead yet. He still gets to use it this turn, but it's circled now. At the end of the turn, he's going to put an X through it and cross it off. Okay? So I've destroyed that slot. Woohoo! But remember, before Tom determines that I've destroyed it, he needs to look on the whole location side, look for any of those armor slots I mentioned earlier. Because if there's an armor slot there, it adds to the defensive value. So Tom's slot might have a 12 next to it, but if he's got 2 armor slots in that same location, then his actual defense there is a 14. So we just need to remember to watch for that. All right. So what do you think, Tom? Sound pretty good?
Yeah, I'm thinking I'd have to see some of this in action, but okay.
It is a little bit fiddly the first couple times you do it, try to figure it all out, but it's really just you get it.
It actually really kind of gels almost immediately once you see it done.
Right. So again, just to run for real quick to show it simple, you grab a die for your weapon. If you got crew bonus, you get a die for that, matching the color. You look at the target ship. Did it move? Grab that colored die, and then you roll, add a d6 for location. You got it. You hit. Yeah. Did you equal or beat its number? Circle it. It's going to die. If you didn't, pink, you missed. Now, one other thing, some slots actually say miss. Usually these are found when you're shooting at the bow or the stern. So like the first slot and the 6th slot, for example, in the bow might both say miss. If you roll that slot, it doesn't matter what your D12 total was. There's no armor to hit. You just missed the whole ship. So it makes actually shooting at the bow and stern even harder sometimes, with a couple exceptions.
Which is very cool.
It is very cool.
There's a lot of those kind of very elegant mechanics
just
that
kind of
make it a cool game.
Now, of course, this wouldn't be a war game without a few special rules. And there are some special weapons. And but it's easy to notice them on your ship because they're marked with little icons. Some of your slots that have weapons in them will have some of them have a T, and the T indicates turret, and that makes it easy. So that just means the turret has better fields of fire. Right? So turrets can basically shoot almost 360, not quite, but pretty close. If you have a triangle in that weapon slot, that means you can do what's called bracketing fire. Now, this sounds complicated, but it's really not. Bracketing fire just means, remember that dice pool we made a minute ago? So you make your dice pool, and then you look at any other weapons that have a triangle with the weapon you're currently firing. And if they do, and if they have the same size dice that you are rolling, you may add that die to the pool. Yep. So make sure that's clear. So let's say you have 2 guns, right, 30 millimeter guns, and they have the little triangle on them. I can either fire each of those 30 millimeter guns once, make its own pool, roll it, make its own pool, roll it. Or I could fire them together once, making the pool for one gun and adding a bonus die for the second gun.
Right.
So this is kind of like the thing in Uncharted Seas and Spartan Games where you can do linked fire, where you have this choice of I can have 2 smaller shots and maybe destroy more things, or 1 bigger shot that will only kill one thing but has a better chance of penetrating against larger targets.
Right.
And then depending on the ship, more of these guns can join forces and try to make one big shot. Right?
Yep.
Does that all make sense, Tom?
I'm going to say yes.
Right. And then finally, the other kind of really interesting weapons type is the saturation fire. Now, this is the big guns. These are those big, 40 millimeter, 50 millimeter deck guns, or whatever they're called, right?
That's all I want to shoot.
Yeah, right. Or maybe the 30-inch guns. I don't know. There's huge guns. These are the big ones you see on battleships, right? These
in the fluff, it's like 10 or 12-inch guns.
There we go, 12-inch guns. Thank you. So these are big. They're marked with big white squares. Now, these are easier than the bracketing fire to understand. Basically, They're just like the dice pool we mentioned earlier. You figure out your dice pool based on the one for the gun, one for the crew, one for your target, and then you add your D6. But with a saturation weapon, instead of adding just one D6 for location, you add a D6 for each of these little squares that are on the card. So typically that's 2d6. And that means as you roll your shot, you get 2 locations. Both those locations are hit by the same sum of your 12-sided dice.
Yep.
So that means if you roll an 18 on your sum of your 12-sided dice and I roll a 3 and a 4, I will probably destroy Craig this time. Craig's 3rd location on his starboard side and his 4th location on his starboard side.
With one shot.
With one shot. So they're boom. And the other big thing is saturation fire does not ignore the miss slot. So if you get a miss slot, you get to re-roll it. So from the bow and stern,
it does ignore
it. Yeah, sure, you're right. It does ignore it. Right? It ignores it by not missing. Which
he is paying attention.
He is paying attention. Tom's got it. So basically, when you're going to rake a guy from the bow or the stern, saturation guns are the ones that do, because the little ships can't really dodge it very well, and you really beat the snot out of them.
Wait a minute. Is there a quiz? Is this going to be on the final?
It might be.
There is not going to be a quiz. Yes, it will be on the final.
Right. Now,
this class.
One other thing. Now, we haven't mentioned anything about how these ships die. So what happens is we're blowing up slots left and right, right? Now, what happens if I roll the slot that's already blown up? Well, here's how it works. If you hit a slot that's already been destroyed, you get to roll your location die again. If you hit a different slot that's not destroyed that in location, then if the sum of your 12-sided are enough to beat that new location spot, you destroy that one too. So it's kind of like if you destroy an already blown up spot, you roll for another slot. If you can blow that one up too, you got it as a weakness. Good. You carry through, you got another spot. Great. But if the second roll is also a destroyed slot, either the one rolled first time or another one that's been destroyed, now you get to roll this fancy thing called break the keel test. This is a chance for the ship to actually crack in half and fall from the sky and die horribly in a flame, much like the Hindenburg.
Much like.
So how you do that is
humanity.
How you do this is you're going to roll 2D red. You're going to add some modifiers, and then you're going to compare it to that structure point thing I mentioned early in the review. On every ship's card, there's a giant number. In the upper left is the structure points. On smaller ships, it's around 18, 17, I think, like that. Our larger ships, it's like 22, and on the big guys, it's around 30. So you roll 2D red, which, by the way, the red dice only go up to 10. Only the black dice go to 12. The red is only up. So you roll 2D red. You add your modifiers. If that number equals or exceeds the structure points of the ship is destroyed.
Yeah.
So on a medium-sized ship, which is a 22, if you can only roll a best roll possible 20 on 2D red, you really need some modifiers to be able to kill that ship. And in all likelihood, you're going to need some modifiers to kill it with any reasonable chance. Well, here's how the modifiers work. For each slot destroyed anywhere on the ship, it's +1 to that die roll. And if the slot happens to be on the location that was just shot, that is actually +2 to the die roll. Now remember, locations are different than slots. So there's 6 slots per location. So if I hit you in your location that's not there, your slot that's not there anymore, I get +2 for every slot that's been destroyed on that location, +1 for every other slot on the ship. So as parts of your ship get destroyed, that breaking the keel test becomes more and more likely. And what's also really slick about this is that because you get +2 if you get shot in the side that's got a lot of damage on it, it becomes very clear to, once you play the game a little bit, that you really want to keep those wounded sides of your ship away from the enemy, which adds a lot of maneuver to the game. If your starboard sides got ripped apart and you got lost 3 slots over there, you got to turn that away because it's worth +6 in the break the keel roll. And now you've gone from a long shot to getting pretty close to those smaller ships to sinking it or crashing it.
Or crashing.
Whatever the case may be. So there's you really get the feel of like locations getting hit and systems going down, and I got to protect the starboard side. What did you think, Craig?
I thought it was very, very cool the way that works, because you're going to be pummeling the same area because of the way your ships are pointed, and then automatically you're going to want to start to maneuver those sides away. But at the same time, you're going to find, or at least we found in the games that we played, that because of your objectives or because of just the layout of the different ships in the fleets, that you need to kind of stick with them to you want to focus your damage on the damaged part of their ship. Unfortunately, when they're returning fire, they're shooting back at what is now the damaged portion of your ship. So it's got a very kind of press your luck element to it also. Yeah. But it is very neat the way that dictates the maneuvering that goes on in the game and how that interacts with your objectives.
Yeah, and the other thing that's nice about this, too, is there's no way for a lucky early shot critical to just kill your big ship. You really can't sink a ship unless you've really damaged it, especially the Leviathans.
That's annoying. when that happens.
Yeah, I hate. There's nothing worse than like turn one, your best ship dies just because of a lucky roll. That's always sticky.
But on the other hand, I did find it was very frustrating destroying a ship in this game. It's not easy. I think you could have a lucky shot like halfway through destroying that side, but in the long run, for me, it took so much work to destroy a ship that there wasn't a lot of drama to it.
Yeah.
It felt more like a slog fest.
Yeah, it's BattleTech feeling that way, right? They just don't explode.
Exactly.
You got to work to kill these things.
Yeah. Which is not necessarily negative. It's just an observation.
It's the way the game feels, right? Yep.
Yep.
Now let's
sounded negative.
It was negative for me, Tom. I'm not going to lie.
You keep saying that. I'm glad. I'm glad you decided not to lie this show.
This time, I'm not going to lie.
Way to keep them honest, Tom. So quickly about torpedoes, because I think so. Here's the thing. I think torpedoes really, really add a lot to this game. I know Craig may slightly differ with me on this torpedo thing.
I do, and I'm not going to lie about that.
I like
either.
the torpedoes. so here's how they work. Right after initiative, but before you do your movement, you get to fire your torpedoes. Now, the way torpedoes work is you get these two markers, and there's a bunch of these little disc markers in the game, and they're all in pairs. So there's two markers.
They look very cool.
There's one that says torpedo launch with a 1 on it, and there's one that says torpedo target with a 1 on it. And there's another match pair of 2s and 3s and 4s. So you take a match pair, you put the launch spot on the ship that's launching it, and you put the target spot in a straight, basically in a line, within line of sight of that launcher, and all torpedoes, I think, are range 18. They go forever. So you put it out somewhere on the board. And that represents the direction you're launching your torpedoes from your ship. So I might put like 3 or 4 of these pairs down. Craig might put 3 or 4 of these pairs down. Then you go ahead and you do your movement. After movement's over, you resolve torpedoes. And how this works is you grab that handy string and you start with a torpedo token pair, and you look from the launch torpedo, you draw the string from the launch torpedo marker to its matching target, and you look along the string, and the first ship, if any, that its base gets crossed by these torpedoes gets hit by them. Yeah. If nobody gets crossed, you take the markers off the board, it was a miss. Okay? So basically, you've got to turn. You launch these torpedoes. You got one movement step to try to get the heck out of the way of the torpedoes. And if you don't get out of them, you get struck by them. Now, if you get struck by torpedoes, that ship takes 3D red, which are the second best dice in the game, but there's no modifiers. There's no bonus for crew. There's no bonus for the location of the enemy ship you're hitting. You just roll 3D red, and you roll a location die, and you blow that up. Now, the thing that's interesting about that is that damage effect, it takes place immediately. Remember, I mentioned before in combat, you circle the damage locations. They're still in effect. So if Craig blows up my gun, I still get to respond with that gun, and then at the end of the turn, I cross it off. Well, torpedo's not so. If torpedo damages a spot, you immediately cross it off. It's gone for the rest for that turn.
Right.
So they're very immediate. They're reasonably deadly. 3D red is good, but not as good as some of the other combinations you can get, but they're pretty nasty. What I like about them is it really forces maneuver, and it feels like an old game I used to love called Carrier Strike, where you had these torpedoes in the water and you try to dodge the torpedo. So you get that very...
Oh, that's a great game.
You get that feeling of the torpedoes coming at you and you got to get the heck out of the way. So I really like that element. But I know, Craig, you felt it was a little fiddly and maybe some clutter to it?
I felt it was quite fiddly and did clutter. Now, this could very well be because obviously I didn't get it, and I ended up flying into my own torpedoes.
Shot your own ship. That may have been kind of embarrassing.
which was embarrassing. But yeah, once you've got larger fleets down, and if you're looking at all 10 ships, and another thing that we should mention is that there are more cards than there are models, because the ships, which I think you'll address, I think I noticed later on in your notes, Russ, the ships represent more than just one type of ship.
Right.
So that little model may be like a dartboard class in this game, and it might be a barback class in the next. Can you tell me where I am right now? Where I'm getting my
stolen?
Where I'm in the pub. So the dartboard class may have torpedoes, and the barback class may not have torpedoes.
Right.
So so you do have some more variety than 10 models alone would indicate.
8 models.
Eight.
Is that a problem, though, when you're looking at the model and you're saying that that's completely wrong type of ship? Are you able to buy the other models?
I think what you have to do is get into a mindset where you're playing a board. This is one of the places where this falls down in the board game, miniature game comparison, because you have to remind yourself the only justification is, well, it's not a board. It's not a minis game. It's a board game, because there isn't, to the best of my knowledge, any way to differentiate. The 2 small ships for each side looked exactly like It's 10, isn't it? 2 small, 2 medium, and 1 large for each, or is it 1 medium?
No, I think you're right. It's 10. I think you're right.
Or is it 1 medium? It could be 1 medium.
Eight chips.
So,
Eight. So it is
Wes,
1 medium.
Yeah.
Who is lying here?
About the torpedoes?
No,
I
about the
haven't
number
even
of ships.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
no,
8.
I think
There are 8 ships. There are 8.
Russ has all the I have the fluff. Russ has the.
There are
all the
8.
boxes
2
and
large,
contents.
2 medium, and 4 small. 8 ships.
Okay, so but they do have different cards to indicate. I
But
think
there are more. Craig's right. There are more cards than there are ships, and so the ships represent a class, but they might be equipped differently. But there are not different models for each class.
Right. So
it's
some
kind
of
of like,
them may have torpedoes.
Again, it's
now,
like
my problem,
Yeah.
torpedoes wise, which is what we were talking about,
Right.
is that Russ likes it because it makes this huge movement and maneuver challenge in a game where you don't normally have movement and maneuver challenges. These big giant, either
it's a
starships
giant empty
or
sky with no
or
terrain, so,
airships in
yeah,
the
right.
sky. There's not a lot of terrain, exactly. So the only terrain you're really dealing with or worried about are these channels where you've got these torpedoes flying through. To me, it didn't seem fiddly in the first game where there was only a couple ships, even though mine weren't any of them. I didn't have any torpedoes in the first game.
He's bitter.
And I'm not bitter. I'm just saying that it seemed less fiddly and more like, oh, cool element, now move on. And the second game we played where you had 3 or 4 all of your ships had torpedoes, and 2 of mine I think did. At that point, and many of yours were firing more than just one spread. So you had like 2 from each ship, and they were flying all over the place, and it just seemed really, really fiddly at that point. And I was looking down, and it could have been the meds. I don't know, but I could not figure for the life of me.
It was a maze of streaking torpedoes, which is just awesome.
That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it was a big cluttered up board game board.
Yeah, it depends how you like it. I mean, I really like torpedoes. I think it's going to be one of those things that people are going to love or hate.
And I honestly felt that it was a huge balance issue because they're huge. They are going to do some damage, especially against smaller ships, and they are going to channel your not only your opponent, but your own ships as well. So I think they're very powerful, and I think that, in my opinion, in my feeling, I felt like I was, quote unquote. Are there point values? I don't think there are.
They're still working on the point values.
Okay,
that's one of the open projects they're working on. So right now they haven't.
From a miniatures gamer point of view, I felt that I was seriously outpointed in most of the situations that I was.
Although both battles were close.
I don't get it. How can they be working on point values if the game is already released?
Well,
because they're what board game and historical gamers call like real
asymmetric scenarios,
asymmetrical warfare, where it's not supposed to be necessarily.
Well, I think they would argue though that the fleets in the box are equally paired. They're just different. So I don't know, but Craig may be right.
And that,
there may
which
be a
is
balance
fine,
issue here.
but
right?
I think the torpedoes are very asymmetrical in their effect on the game, and so very difficult to calculate their impact on which ship is more powerful than another ship. So where you had much faster ships and all of them had torpedoes, I had much slower ships with fewer torpedoes. And in the second game that we played, and in that second game, I did feel like I was constantly on the back foot.
Oh, there you go. So there you go. So 2 different pins on torpedoes. I think they're. We'll have to see how that pans out.
I think they're neat.
So that's pretty much the whole game, though. That is it.
Yeah.
Really. So once you get the dice pool thing down, that's really the most complicated mechanic in the game. Everything else comes from that. What I really like, and Craig and I have mentioned both before that we like this, is the idea that the damage progresses and you get that battlefield wear and tear on your ships. Yeah. And just a few examples of some of the slots to give you some of the flavor. Of course, there's all the weapon slots. When they get destroyed, of course, the weapon goes offline. There's those crew slots. And we didn't mention repairing. So in the end phase of a turn, you can repair. And all that means is you roll any location that has a crew slot that's still left in it, can roll 2d red plus whatever the crew slot die is. And if that total is 15 or higher, you can repair 1 slot on that section. So you can bring things back online again. But if the crew are destroyed or there's no crew on that location, then you can't make any repair rolls there. So it can be to the point where nothing ever gets fixed on that particular side of the ship, which is nasty. There are also these cool little slots called Tesla coils, and these provide stability to the ship, and every Tesla coil you lose is -1 to your dice pool. So as your ship takes damage, you start
here's a
losing
question,
those.
Russ.
Yeah.
Is that -1 to each die in the dice pool,
No.
or -1 total to the total that you roll?
It's to the what they call the breach roll, the penetration
okay.
roll, yeah. Also, all the engines are on there, and each engine has a number of MP below it that sums up to the total movement points of your ship. So as you lose engines, you're actually losing movement control. We talked about steering gear earlier. Losing your steering gear is bad. And I really like this. Again, this really just, it brings to life, it feels like it's, again, kind of like Battletech. There's all the parts of your ship are there, exposed, and can die, and it's kind of neat to see them break apart.
Yep. I have another question with the crew.
Yeah.
How do you spend the crew also gives you a bonus die in your shooting pool, as you've noted. How does that work? Does every weapon in that area or region or whatever
they add a crew die to every shot from that location. So if you choose to fire each gun once, the crew die would be added to each shot. If you choose to fire, if you pool them all together into one combined shot, the crew would only add one to that.
So you're kind of losing dice by pooling also.
Yeah, which is the same thing as with linking, right? In Dystopia, it's the same idea. If you're linking, you're getting more than you would if you fired them singly, but not as much. It's kind of interesting. It's sort of interesting balance.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's what's kind of hard to explain to kind of see it in action, but that's basically what it is.
Right.
So that's pretty much the whole game. Does that make sense, Tom?
Yeah, let's just play a turn. Come on.
Okay, I wish we could. Now it is. So let's talk a little about the future here before we get to final thoughts here. This is totally, it's the guys that brought you Battletech, right? Which means they're going to expand the bejesus out of this. Let's just be clear. Already in the core rulebook, there's a bunch of optional rules. I've used the ramming rules right out of the box. They're fine. There's rules for wind in there. And the wind rules hinted, because they mentioned that clouds move around, they hinted at cloud rules. So I emailed Randall on this, said, oh yeah, sure, here. And he sent me this demo rules that they're working on from the captain's box for clouds. And clouds, are a great concept because they're going to add, now you got the terrain I was so missing so much. Now you can have clouds in the battlefield. They either reduce your visibility and therefore take minuses off of your to hit rolls for each cloud you go through, or if there's too many of them, they finally just block line of sight. And again, the wind's going to move them around. It's going to force maneuver more, which is nice. They also mentioned on their website they're going to be adding that altitude feature, so there's going to be low, medium, and high altitude factored into the game. There's just a lot going on here. You can tell they're just going to take this all the way to 11, if assuming the game does well. And being the guys behind Battletech, you know they're going to scale the heck out of it. And you can see so much of how so many of the game's rules are on these ship cards that it'd be very easy to add a whole new concept like shields, which would really just be a fancy version of armor or whatever else they want to dream up. It's really very simple. Like one thing I wanted to mention was that I like about this game, and the reason I classify it as a naval combat game, is that there's some really cool use of crossing the T. You can really get your rakes going on in this game, which is basically in a rake in naval combat is when you can get your broadside against the enemy's bow or stern. And it's really important to get them on the stern. If you can, it does the most damage historically. Well, in this game, that all works without any special rules because basically the bonus dice you add to your pool from the stern location are better. The armor values are worse in the stern, and there's no crew to repair any damage in the stern because basically things are too complicated back there. So you can really just mess a ship up from the rear. And in fact, when we were playing our first game, it was 2-on-1, and I only had small ships, and Craig had his giant Leviathan.
Yeah.
I was having a hard time hurting him, and finally I got around to the stern, and sort of by accident, I was like, oh my gosh, stern rakes work. And I started just staying back there and just raking, and finally I almost took the ship to a halt and couldn't get away.
I was moving 1 hex a turn at
so
that
you
point.
really can. And that I really like because so many naval combat games just don't get that in there very well. You know, I think Uncharted Seas even yanked it out eventually because it was too complicated. That rule is great that it's in this game without any special rules at all. It's just worked into how the color dice and the location things work. It's really nice.
Yeah.
So I really like that. So anywho, let's get into final thoughts here. Craig, we should probably. I don't even know if Tom's familiar with our patent pending D6G rating system. So Craig, in the style of a Leviathan bosun's mate, who has just seen the Tesla coil trim tank blown off 2 meters from his face. Please describe the patent-pending D6G rating system.
Okay. You're going to have to bear with me. The trim tank was just blown off 2 meters in front of my face. That is bad, huh? How bad is it? Well, it's odd that you should mention that since it blew up 2 meters in front of my face, but let us say if it blew up 1 meter in front of my face, that would be really bad. And if it blew up 6 meters in front of my face, not so bad. So if you want to reverse it, say how far away from the badness you want to be as far away as possible in reverse. So let's say if we were going to rate this like in the D6G system, and you want to be far away from the badness, but far away is good. See, so let's say it's not blowing up. Let's say it's fixing itself. So you want to be close. So the closer you are, the better it is. So if it's a 2, You're good. It's good. It's great. Everybody's going to like being close to the tank that's not blowing up. If you want to be far away because it's blowing up, that's bad. A 6. 6 is really bad. Let's say a 6 is really, really bad. It's as bad as you can get. 6, you don't want to be near something that's blowing up. So when we review a game, we're going to give it a number between 6 and 2. And let's say, I'm going to say, a 6. That means it's bad. Nobody wants to be near a big trim tank when it blows up. But if I'm going to say a 2, that's great. That's much better. You want to get close, so that's the trim tank maybe not so blowing up so much.
Okay. I think you may have got a tie in there in the middle. Tom, did that all make sense?
I think he got hit in the head with shrapnel there.
I think something blew up and that, probably hit me in the head.
Okay. So, I don't know, Craig, you want to go first?
No, I want you to go first. I need to get my breath back.
So, okay, Tom, I'll sum up, and then, Tom, you can rate this on your desire to play it after we spent all this time describing this. How's that?
Well, I have some questions before I rate it.
Okay. Well, all right. Why don't you hit with your questions, Tom? Go ahead.
Okay. Questions is, when you play this, what's the length of a game about?
Good question. I would say the small scenario, the one that Craig and I played with the 2-on-2 ships, was that, Craig, about an hour and a half, maybe?
Maybe not even quite that much.
Maybe not that long. So I'd say the smaller ship count, like 2-on-2, is a little over an hour. Obviously, learning the rules, probably schedule 2 hours. If you're doing the bigger ship engagement, though, that could be a bit longer. I'd say that could go as long as 3 hours if you really are. If you got a lot of thinking going on there and you got a lot of analysis paralysis.
Is there rules for custom creating your whole ship?
I'm glad you asked that question. Not in the core game, but it is very clear the way these slots work. That could easily happen, and I could easily see them, again, very much like BattleTech, coming out with an expansion that would let you do that, but not in the core rule set, no.
Well, to be fair, in BattleTech, I got caught up in actually creating the mechs, and I never really actually used like 98% of the ones I made.
Yeah.
But you just kept building them because you could.
Right.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so I'll give my final thoughts, and you can tell us what you think about it. So, just to sum up, I did not like this game at Gen Con at all, and I was really disappointed because I wanted to, and now I really like it now, actually. I would play this game anytime someone asked me to, and I'm considering purchasing my own copy. This is our review copy now. We're going to give it away, but I'm seriously considering if it's at Gen Con, I will have a hard time not bringing it home, despite it being a coffin box and not fitting in my luggage. I think it fills a really nice niche, and Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, because you have a much broader knowledge of board games than I do, but I'm not really sure there's good but still reasonably fast-playing naval combat board games out there.
Well, Games Workshop just released theirs. I don't know how good that one was. One last year,
Yeah, we reviewed that already. That game is a lot, I would say that's a lot more luck-driven and lighter than this.
Well, I think there are elements that are much more luck-driven and lighter.
Not that it's a bad game, it's just different, but I don't think it's quite as serious a naval combat game as this one is.
And I believe WizKids is about to re-release the Pirates of the Spanish Main type thing.
But is that a card game? Or is that actually a...
No, remember that you punched out the ships?
No, I know it was before, but I think the re-release is cards, isn't it? Or is it actually going to be punched out again, too? That'd be nice.
Well, just because it's a card doesn't mean it's not a miniatures game, right?
Oh, good point.
No, but unless there's another game that they're coming out with, the game that they're coming out with that I've seen previewed is actually not the combat miniatures game, card or no card. It's actually an actual card game.
Oh, well... Yeah, well, I don't know much about board games. So cut me some slack.
You should start your own show. That'd be awesome. I think, and that's what I like about this. There aren't, even the Dean of Boardgame Podcasting couldn't name more than like 3 of these naval combat games. So it's nice to see, I think, a nice choice out there for folks. I think miniature wargamers have a few choices nowadays, especially with Spartan, but the board gaming side does not. So this fills a really nice niche there, even though it's sort of this alternate history flying boat thing. At its core, it's got torpedoes and boats. It's really a naval combat game. Now they're going to add the optional rules for altitude and stuff, but that's really what it is. I think the models are solid. They look fine. We put a lot of pictures up on our Facebook page and in our Twitter feed, so take a look there to get a good feel for what they look like. I think with a little ink, they would look really good with not much work at all. But you don't have to. I think they look fine, especially if you're a board gamer. You're going to be very happy with the quality there. I like the scenarios. I really like the asymmetric scenario, especially the third one that Craig and I played. I really felt like I was outpowered. Craig had a much better boat, but in the end, it was a very close battle, so they really put a lot of thought in those scenarios. You clearly can tell they play tested them. And so the combat system, I'm going to call it fiddly but elegant.
That's not possible.
That's even fair, because here's the thing: it does feel sort of fiddly when you're first learning the whole dice pool thing and trying to figure out where you pull dice from. But really, when you compare it to a game like BattleTech, there's no modifiers to look up. It's very simple, but it handles all the things I mentioned. It handles stern rakes very nicely. It handles the fact you're shooting the broadside. It handles long range versus short range. All that stuff is really, really easy. The card system is really slick. It's all on the cards. There's no rules to look up once you understand the basic mechanics of building the dice pool. And I think, again, as Tom hinted at, I think these cards could really be used to expand the game in a variety of ways. They could launch expansion with this, all kinds of different options, and it's right there in the cards. One problem with the elegant but fiddly dice pool system is you definitely need another set of dice. They come with 2 of each color, and it's just not enough. You really find yourself doing a lot of rerolls and adding them in and saying, yes, I actually have 4 blue dice, so I'm going to reroll 2 of them. It just slows the game down a lot. So if you think you're going to like this game when you're ordering it, definitely order a second pack of the special dice.
Or I can ink some for you.
Tom will ink some for you for a small fee, I'm sure. Right?
Ethics, sir. Ethics.
Right. Free. He'll do them for free. He'll come to your house and deliver them.
Wow. That's quite a deal.
I think the damage slot system, I really like the damage slot system. I like how where you get hit not only knocks systems out, but it also affects the survivability of the ship long term, where it's going to break, and it forces you to hide your battle damage and limp along and sort of favor your right side or whatever. I think that's really cool. It just felt really like my big ship was slowly falling apart. And unlike Craig, I like the torpedo phase. I think it's really nice. And it's Carrier Strike, which I love Carrier Strike. My biggest complaint about the aesthetics is something that Tom hinted at, which is the 2 biggest ships in the game both clearly on the models have stern turrets.
WYSIWYG.
Yes, exactly,
Indeed.
Tom. And neither of the cards have stern turrets in those ships. They just don't. And I'm sure it's a game balance thing, but it bothered me that there's these giant turrets in the front. There's one giant turret in the rear, but it's not really there in stats. So that just kind of
proves you're a miniature gamer, because Board Gamer would not care.
See, exactly. That's totally an aesthetic thing that most people wouldn't give a hoot about.
Yeah. But you do give a hoot about it when when your models have the back turret and the opponents have the back turret, but your models don't get to shoot any back turrets and his models do.
And
you're like, but my model has that too.
And I'd say that
where it counts.
And the expansion options here are endless. This game, it's Catalyst, it's BattleTech guys. You know they're going to just add to this thing forever as long as they make a modicum of money on it. So if you're going to be buying into a universe that they're clearly ready to back and support, which is nice. I think the biggest weakness to the game is also its strength, which is it's a naval combat game. And I think the reason there's not a lot of naval combat games in the market is simply because there's only a very few folks who actually like true naval combat games. Most folks think they're kind of dull because really it's all about maneuver and shooting. I think torpedoes add a little bit of spice to it, but basically it is one of those. I happen to be the kind of person that really likes naval combat games. So this game really appeals to me, but to a lot of other people, it could be like those railroad crayon games. It may not be so good. So it really comes down to what you like there. But I'm going to rate this thing. Here we go. Ready?
Yep.
I'm going to say that if you're just a general board gamer and are looking for something that's sort of new and different, I think you're going to like this thing on a 4+. Mm-hmm. Okay, average gamer like it. But if you like naval combat games, I'm going to give it a +2 modifier, meaning it's a 2+ for anybody who likes naval combat games. Yes, that's my thing. But I'll give it a +1 for steampunk. If you're a steampunk fan, I think the fluff's going to they've got so much fluff in here. It's a 3+ for steampunk, 2+ for naval combat, 4+ for the general gamer.
You are all over the place.
And that is my complex 3-pronged modifier rating.
Aren't you supposed to be rating this with colored dice, sir?
Ooh,
you
good
said
point,
no
Tom.
modifiers, and then you throw modifiers in there.
You're
Is
right.
this some house variant?
He gets all excited and then
all
he
right,
forgets.
no, I'll switch it. I'm going to fix this, Tom. Here we go. Ready? It's a black die for naval combat gamers, a red die for...
Seriously, in my condition, you made me do that whole stupid spiel, and then you're not even using our rating system?
Well, both. It's convertible there. It goes either way.
Oh, okay.
All right, so Tom, do you want to wait for Craig, or do you want to jump in now with your desire?
No. I gotta hear the other coin.
All right, Craig, go.
Okay. Well, here's my other coin, if you will. Mine is a black coin. I didn't like it at Gen Con either, and I think we were both looking forward to it a lot. So I think that might have been part of it, because I don't think it was ready to be shown at Gen Con in the final analysis. I did enjoy myself. It is a game that I would play if people wanted to play it. I don't know that it fills a niche. I don't know how much it does fill a niche, but I don't know how much of a demand there is for the niche, I guess is what I'm saying. So I don't know, like if you've got a subset of gamers who like naval stuff and then a subset of gamers who like naval stuff who are looking for a board game versus a miniatures game, I don't know where that break is going to fall, whether it's going to fall in favor of Leviathan or not, because it is a board game.
Right.
I liked the models also. They feel like toys when you pick them up. They don't feel like they don't have a lot of heft to them. They're plastic, but there is a lot of detail there. Unfortunately, the detail is lost, I feel, in the base coat that you get right out of the box. So to really kick it up a notch, you have to ink it. I would be looking at least 2 coats of ink, a black ink for the gray or metal sections and a brown ink for the bronze or brass sections would really kick the whole model up, I think, to the next level. Without it, it does feel and look a bit like a toy, but the detail's all there. It's just not clearly visible.
Ooh, I'll tell you what, I'll ink one up and put the decals on the flags on it and everything. And we'll take a picture of that, and we'll include that in the prize pack, and that way people can get a feel for what it looks like all filled up. How's that?
Get an idea. And written directions on how they could do that to all the other ones.
Sure.
They'll be like, what do I do now?
Maybe I'll do a 30-minute video on how to paint one in 15 minutes.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, only if you can figure out how to post a 30-minute video.
Right.
As far as the scenarios go, I did like the scenarios also. Oddly enough, the asymmetrical scenario to me felt much more even, which I think says a lot about the importance of maneuver and speed in this game. Because I had a medium fast and a very, very slow ship, and you had 2 very fast ships, and we're just pummeling the crap out of that big ship of mine, which was neat. I thought I really felt like, wow, this is a system that has kind of captured that element of combat that most games fall down on, where in most games you're like, oh, I have a land raider and you have 2, little jeeps with guns on them or whatever, and now we will see how can they compensate? Bam, bam, they're dead, they can't. Oh, okay. Right. In this game, it was like, oh, okay, so the speed is kind of like you were zipping around behind me, getting, crossing my T back there. I couldn't bring all my weapons to bear, and of course you were able to concentrate on one section. So once you'd wounded that section, not only are you now pummeling into a section that's already wounded, but I can't shoot back because the gun's back there. I think there's an awesome element, granularity, and an element of realism to the game that is very elegantly dealt with in that system, where most of the math is hidden by, within the mechanics of that game, which I really liked a lot as far as the asymmetric mission went. And now again, then you're going to fall. I'm going to say they fell down on balance, at least in my point of view, for the less asymmetrical mission that had us both using everything out of the box. And my stuff was much slower than your stuff, and I had fewer torpedoes. And I don't know where that compensation was. I don't know where my, like, okay, I'm slower. And then you would be like, oh, but you make it up in armor. Oh, I hit that area, but it's got armor. I'm like, no, Russ, no, it doesn't have any extra armor. So there may be armor somewhere that I wasn't getting hit, but there wasn't any armor where I was getting hit, so I wouldn't know. So I feel like there may be some more work that needs to be done as far as the balance goes. It was very frustrating. That second game for me was very frustrating. I think that the stern, everything you said, I really like the way that all of the stern raking and everything was buried in the system, so it's taken care of without you having to go, oh, okay, but now I'm in this arc, so I have to add or subtract. That's all taken care of by those different dice. Same thing with the damage slots and everything. I loved all that. Didn't love the torpedo phase, but I already talked about that. Another place where it's going to fall down for wargamers who are looking for a really nice combination is, like you said, the aesthetics of the ships, where I'm looking at a ship model that looks pretty much identical to your ship model, but I don't, or even the ship model that I used in the last game. Now it's a totally different ship. So it's very much going to get into your head, and it's going to be whispering board game in the voice of Smeagol in the back of your mind as you're playing board game, because this is the exact same model I played last game, but now it's totally different as far as its abilities go. So I didn't really like that. And so there you go. So those are basically my thoughts. I think it's a strong game. I like what it's doing. I think it succeeds well. Other than the torpedoes, which I'm still up in the air about. I don't know that I dislike them strongly enough to say it's a negative, but it did seem fiddly to me. I think it's a game that does succeed in what it sets out to do. I just don't know what kind of a demand there is for that. I think there's going to be hardcore mech warrior guys or mech battletech guys out there that are like, yes, this is awesome. And I think that it does all of those things extremely well. I just don't know how big that particular subset of gamers is.
Bring it home. What are you going to rate it, man?
So I am going to rate it with a 3+.
3+, straight up. I like that. That's
straight up 3+.
Actually.
I think your average gamer is going to play it, and they're going to be probably more inclined to like it than to dislike it.
Right, cool.
And I'm not going to get any more granular than that.
So what do you think of all that, Tom?
I don't know. Naval combat games have always been a little bit boring because I'd rather have a lot of miniatures than just a couple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The whole maneuvering aspect. But at the same time, Battletech, while I don't play it very often, it's still in my collection, and it's still a Catalyst supports their games. Do you see this having legs on a company standpoint?
Yeah.
Do you see it being around in a couple years?
They're behind it. I think as long as the sales support the game, they will be there for it. I see Catalyst really being into this thing.
Is Michael Stackpole going to write a couple novels about it?
I don't know about
cool.
that. They look at how much fluff is in the basic book. I mean, the box.
The 2 short stories are very engaging. I will say that they are far better than your average stuff.
But honestly, that's what got me into BattleTech. I mean, the BattleTech's a good game, but I read so many of the books from the series that when I played it, that's right. There's the different mechs. There's an atlas. There's this, and I enjoyed that aspect to it.
Yeah,
that brought me into the miniatures. When I read a Warhammer book, well, that kind of made me want to stop playing the game. But talk about well written. I'm pretty sure 40K and well written. Oh wait, am I treading on toes there?
I'm just saying there's a lot more 40K books than there are BattleTech, and I would put the best 40K books up against the best BattleTech books. It's just because there's so many more 40K books that some of them are really, really horrible crimes against literature.
Okay, those are the ones I have read then.
Exactly. And if those happen to be the first ones you get introduced to, then I do not fault you in any way, shape, or form that you never picked up another one.
All right. Well, you'll have to point me to some good ones then.
There are some good ones. Of course, there are some dogs in the BattleTech universe too, but that's neither here nor there.
We're going off topic. So
Yes,
I guess I would try it, but with that price point and all that, I would have to play someone else's copy first.
Right. If only you had a podcast and you could get a free review copy, that'd be awesome.
Hey, now.
I turned it down, actually.
I know. That was a huge mistake, Tom. I think you'd have enjoyed it.
But it was an ethical move, nonetheless.
It was ethical. Very ethical.
It was very ethical. I did want to say one other thing, because I think people might be listening to this and thinking that 8 ships isn't enough. The way this game plays, 8 ships is enough. So
8 is enough.
It's kind of like BattleTech, where you're like, oh, but it's not an army scale. I want like 40 mechs out there, blah, blah, blah. And you might get that point in your head with this game too. But because of all the damage tracking and everything, 4 ships is enough for a really solid, lengthy game with Leviathans. Yeah. So money-wise, it may not fall down for you that way, but gameplay-wise, 8 ships in the box that is a nice, long, solid game.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for joining us here on today's mega doubleheader episode. Really appreciate that.
Oh, it's my pleasure, guys. I very much enjoy this show and listen to much of it.
Well, good. We enjoy your show too, and I listen to much of it as well.
Indeed.
Hey, Tom, any new hotness from the Dice Tower people should know about?
Well, I mean, we're still on track to review every board game ever designed, but that's probably never going to happen. But
it's nice to have goals, though.
One of the things that I'm trying to do right now is, as the new editor of news at Game Salute, I'm trying to cover every major news story in the gaming world. So I can usually keep up with the board game news, but I'm not always there with miniatures. So if any of your listeners want to be a minion,
oh, there you go,
and help out with that, just email me and let me know. Or if you have a blog that you think I should feature, I'm trying to feature all blogs and podcasts fairly Maybe I'll do the Dice Tower one more time than all the rest. But
That's fair.
Hey, it's only fair. It's only fair.
But really, so if you go there, you're going to see a wide variety of blogs and podcasts, and a lot of good information. We're trying to make it a central hub for news and stuff. So I hope you guys check that out. And if you have information about games and stuff, let me know that too.
Well, where should they send that to, Tom?
Send it to tomvasel@gmail.com. That's just the best address.
Okay, there you go. Well, Tom, thanks again. Thanks so much for.
I try to answer all my email.
Great. Do you answer all your email? Because we try to, but we don't always succeed.
Yeah, I try to. Yes.
Yes, try. Well, that's the important thing. Well, Tom, thanks again so much. It was really a pleasure to have you on the show, and thanks for all the hard work you do in the game industry over the years, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It is fun to come on. Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Thanks a lot, Tom.
Worlds to conquer, foes to vanquish, violence to sow, and medieval crops to reap. The whole world of gaming at your fingertips. The D6 generation. Born to game.
And summer is well and truly upon us now, and with summer comes warm days in the office where it's all nasty and stuffy, and you're looking outside at that glorious sun, and you're thinking, I wish I was on vacation. Well, you know what? When you want to be on vacation and you're a geek, there's really only one way to do it, and that's Geek Nation Tours.
Indeed, you do. If you go to their website and you click on upcoming tours, you see they have 2 Star Trek tours coming up right now.
Hey, why not?
In August. They also have the Gen Con tour. Of course, that's probably already sold out, but that's all closed. The Star Trek ones one of the Star Trek ones is closed. The one in Vegas is closed, but the one in
both Vegas. One is exploring sites from Hollywood to Vegas.
Yeah, that one's still open. That's in early August.
Right. Yeah,
That's
look at
pretty
that.
Cool. So if you're not going to make Gen Con, you want to go to that. That looks awesome. And then also, of course, London, geeking out with miniatures in England. See all the great miniature gaming companies over there.
It's funny that you should mention Gen Con.
Yeah.
That's going to be awesome. We are looking forward to seeing all of the folks from Geek Nation Tours. We're even getting shirts, so you'll recognize us when you see us.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
If we're not in our D6G shirts, we'll be in Geek Nation Tours shirts.
That'll be fun.
And we're going to have dinner, and all of these tours include these dinners with folks that are going to know a lot about what you're going to be seeing, and they're going to have like a whole thing, like orientation that's going to talk about what that particular trip is all about, so you get the absolute most out of every trip. Terrace and his folks will make sure that you don't miss a trick, no matter which one of these trips you go on.
That is geeknationtours.com.
Yay! This edition of Jever Notice is brought to you by Lieutenant Adon Tejeda, who would like to say farewell to the staff of the University of California Police Department at Berkeley. It doesn't feel like 29 years, and I will miss you all in retirement. Well, thanks for your service, Adon, and enjoy that retirement. Plenty of time to play some games. Did you ever notice how much work sometimes goes into being somebody's friend? Sometimes you've got to do a little extra, be there a little bit more, extend yourself a little bit further, and sometimes, quite often in these moments when you've got to go put yourself out on a limb, the payoff is a lot less too. That's what I've been noticing these last few weeks. With everything that's been going on, I had a couple surgeries, and there was some medication involved you may or may not have noticed. Things have been kind of rough, and I can't really do much for myself. It's really annoying because it's like one arm, and yet at the same time, I need someone here to help me with the baby, and I can't drive anywhere, so I'm really at the mercy of my friends and family. And I've realized, wow, at the same time that I need these people more than I have in some circumstances ever needed them before, I at the same time have not ever been less probably pleasant to be around. one of the side effects of the medication was really bad nausea, which of course just kind of makes me sort of slow, and I didn't move a lot, and I wasn't the most pleasant person to be around. And yeah, so I think one of the side effects was I was a little more sensitive, but I don't know. I don't know about that, or whether that's true or not. But anyway, I know I was a little sharpish, and I know that I wasn't nearly as amusing as I normally am, or at least I think I normally am. And so the fact that there are people in my life that will still be there with me when I need help is awesome, and it's awe-inspiring, and it's moments like this when you really realize that. And I would like to throw in a shout out to all the listeners who sent me emails and well wishes, insofar as I was like talking about what was going on. But yeah, so really my parents have been there, and that's awesome. I've always known I've had awesome parents, so I'm not doing like gonna be surprising anyone that I say that my parents are awesome. They are really like be above and beyond the Call of Duty on a regular basis. But also like my friend Pete threw out all of his plans whenever I had an opportunity to get out a little bit, which is very rare and very random. And so that was really neat, and totally like would just stand up from a game and head out with me. Of course, it is also sort of his fault that I saw Black Beauty or Sleeping Beauty, whatever, what's her name? Snow White. That's it, Snow White and the Huntsman, which made me more nauseous than the medication did. But yeah, it's really, really struck home to me how important friendship is, especially at a moment like this when you can't give as much as you normally give. And I like to think of myself as a person who in friendship gives. I always try to be there for my friends when they need me. I always try to rally support when somebody's in, being threatened by something emotionally or physically, or, I mean, we do have like, those bears up here in New Hampshire. And so I've never really, I am always very uncomfortable taking assistance from other people. And I don't like being the person who counts on that who depends on other people. I like having other people I can depend on, and I lean on them occasionally, but I don't like it when I have to, and that's where I've been. And so it really has struck home. Russ rearranged his plans one night and came over here, actually the night right after my second surgery. And so, believe it or not, this is quite amusing to me anyway, because I just realized it yesterday. The medication has actually been evened out. Several different medical people have helped me figure out like exactly what order I'm supposed to be taking these in, and because all the bottles are like take once a day, take 3 times, whatever. And so I feel much, 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 much better. I'm still not finishing my meals and stuff, but I'm sure that will come. And, of course, I haven't been off the couch in days and days and days, so I'm not in any danger of losing any weight. But so I knew that Russ came over to play Leviathans, and I knew that we'd played twice. I could not for the life of me tell you what room we played in. And so for the longest time, for days, I thought we had played upstairs, and that the baby wasn't in the house. And come to find out, I still don't actually know if the baby was in the house. But we played down here in the pub, and the only reason I know that is because I came down here earlier today with my dad, who has never played in one of these games in his life, but helped me a little bit with some terrain projects because I was kind of going crazy not being able to do a lot. And I found the broken glass because during my gaming with Russ, I actually knocked over a glass full of soda and shattered it in a very interesting way. Like it's still as tall as it always was, but it's only half a glass. It's very, very interesting. And so I found the glass. I was like, oh my God, I was down here. So that's the kind of state that I've been in. I think I'm kind of funny when I'm like that, but I don't think I am. And so what I'd like to just talk about today, or make this about, because I've already talked about it, is really, as a friend, keep an eye out for when people really need you and try to be there for them. And even more important, especially for like somebody who's in my position and in this particular point in life, be appreciative and know who those people are. You know, I mean, there are lots of people in your life. And lots of them can be really cool, and lots of them can be fun to hang out with, but they're not going to be the ones who kind of go above and beyond and help you out. Some of them may even invite you to dinner and then coincidentally split off from the group that you thought you were going to dinner with and go to have dinner at another table. I mean, you know, as a person who desperately needs social interaction and is really missing that element of their life because they're trapped at home all day, that could be kind of shocking. And, you know, so again, probably very sensitive because of the drugs. So, you know, not going to take it personally. But, yeah, so keep that in mind, both as a friend that's needed, but also as a friend who's in need. Be aware of those people that are helping you, and be aware of those people that are helping you out, because I think we're in a unique situation. It's interesting. In high school, maybe gamers don't have as many friends maybe as a bunch of other people do. But as your life progresses, I'm going to go out and I'm going to say this. I think gamers end up having more friends than a lot of those people in high school have. Okay? Because you've got your friends. Everybody's got some friends. But then you've got gamer friends, and those circles just keep getting wider and wider. And I know with the podcast, our friendships have just gotten wider and wider. And so it's great to have all those people, but sometimes when the chips are down, there's going to be a small group of people that really stick by you and really help you out. And it's important. Not only is it important to thank those people when that need arises and they prove themselves to be there, but it's important for you to be those people too, for the people that really matter to you. So I am just giving this Did You Ever Notice as a shout out to all those folks that have been helping me. I don't know what I would have done without all the help that I've been receiving from my family and from a few really close friends. And yeah, and a call to arms. Be nicer to each other. And, you know, that goes on forums too, but whatever. You know, don't be a jerk. Very little can I do lately, but I can surf forums, and I haven't actually been writing on most forums lately because there are a bunch of jerks out there. But anyway, and if you've written me emails and I haven't responded, the reason is because it's horrifically painful for me to type right now. So I try to keep them small. I try to get as many responses out there as possible, back out there as possible. I don't know that I'll catch up on my backlog, and I do apologize for that. So that's about all I have to talk about tonight. Thanks for listening, and well, this isn't redundant. Good night.
Achievement unlocked. You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
Again, Craig, take two. Give me some noise.
Just what makes that little ant
All right, good.
think. Yeah, you got me.
Tom, how about some noise?
Hello, everybody.
Nice, Tom.
Show off.
Someone's not on Vicodin.